Okay, guys, there we are. We're live. We moved the live podcast today by a day. Obviously, we've had a big week in terms of interviews here, you guys. So we've got a lot to go through in today's presentation. We're going to be starting it off with some of the key headlines from this week's events in the Bitcoin mining sector. Obviously, the price of Bitcoin has taken off in a big way this week. The mining stocks, Anthony, are finally following suit. We're starting to see some big green shoots, as you would say, in the mining sector. So we're going to talk about all that. Then we have a special guest, Sebastian, which I'm sure most of you are well aware of. He's going to pop on around 10:45, so in about 30 to 45 minutes time. He's going to join us for all of your Q&A session here, so feel free to type some questions in. We'll start to save those for that section, and we're going to get all of your questions answered in today's presentation. So Anthony, big week for power mining analysis, big week for Bitcoin, and big week for the miners. How are you feeling, buddy?
Yeah, feeling really good today. Really green day today, and seeing some of these miners start moving as we expected to in the last few weeks.
Yeah, it's really been nice to see. We've talked about this disconnect in the price of Bitcoin versus the miners versus MicroStrategy multiple times on the channel. We put out a video last week, Anthony, saying 4 reasons why we're so excited about holding the Bitcoin miners specifically. And it looks like the market is finally starting to wake up to some of these factors that just weren't being priced in. Why do you think we're starting to see this shift right now?
There's been a lot of interesting updates in the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks. We've had with regards to Riot putting a bid in for Bitfarms and buying shares in that company. We've seen Corp make an offer for Core Scientific. There seems to be a change now in the way that these mining companies are looked at in terms of what they're doing. They're data center providers with cheap energy, so they've got multiple uses, and the AI space needs power and facilities, and we're seeing that now with some of these miners. Also, when you look at the size of the growth strategies for some of these companies, it sort of lends its way now to believing there's going to be a lot more merger and acquisition activity between now and the end of the year, as we see 30 public miners in North America probably get down to more significant lower number than that, because it's a case of, at the moment, we're seeing those that can and those that can't. So you've got the big 4 or 5 companies up there now growing significant hash rate. Then you've got a group of miners behind them that are growing, but not the same sort of levels. And then you've got a group at the bottom who just are not able to really grow any significance because the challenges are there to raise capital in the current environment. Apart from, if they sell their HODL, that's if they have a HODL, or they sell shares through an ATM. And the difficulty is when you're a small miner selling, even saying selling 10 or 20% of the company is a challenge to do that, but also you're not going to get a brilliant return. If you think about how some of the miners that are in that top group now have got there, we've talked endlessly about the likes of how CleanSpark did it over the last sort of 18 months. They started this process sort of like under the radar, using the ATMs, and if you have a reasonably good share volume, you can hide a lot of the ATM within those numbers. So, if you're a company that sells, has a volume of about 1 million shares a day, and you want to start using an ATM, the difficulty is it's going to be obvious when you're selling shares because there'll be blocks of red. But if you're the likes of CleanSpark or Riot Platforms or Marathon Digital, now we're looking at IREN and Bitfarms, they have massive volumes a day, 20, 30, 40, 50 million shares a day. So if you're selling 1 million shares, not even going to be noticed. Yeah. And it goes under the radar. And then all of a sudden, 2 months later, they come out and say, we've just got rid of 500 million shares in the last 2 months. And people went, well, how do you do that? Because the volumes are there to do it. So that group at the top are able to expand far quicker and benefit from it. And, we'll talk about some of these more in depth, some of these miners and where we've seen the growth. I mean, it was only 2 or 3 weeks ago, Bryce, that we said how many miners were actually year to date in positive territory, and there was really 1 or 2. Now, more than half a sort of
So let's get into that, Anthony, because I remember you talking specifically. We asked a few of the CEOs about the have and the have-nots. You're exactly right with that ATM strategy. It really does lend itself better to higher volume, higher share price companies. But we've brought along some graphics here, you guys. We're going to go through a few of the key events for sure. Core Scientific first up here, and then we'll get into the Q&A section with Sebastian. So first things first, Anthony, I've had to update these tables about 3 or 4 times this morning because the price of everything is just changing so rapidly. Bitcoin, I'm not even sure what it's at right now. Maybe someone can type it in the chat. At the time this was taken, right north.
Not too far away, Bryce, from there, not too far.
Okay, great. And as we're seeing from AQM1 here, we're seeing resistance in that 72, 74,000 range. But I do feel like, as you say here, ready to moon. Once we can break through this, Anthony, we've been consolidating in this high 60, kind of 65 to 70 range for quite some time now. Now we've got all these international ETFs coming online. We talked about that this week, the feeding frenzy. Because of the way the world clock works, we're now getting Bitcoin ETFs buying Bitcoin 24 hours a day. So we're really starting to see that price move. So big move there. And then obviously, Anthony, as a result, and finally, we're starting to see the correlation we've all been waiting for, a big, big move in the price of the miners this morning. So you guys, at the time this was taken, IREN was only up 9%. Anthony, now how are we looking for IREN? You said north of 12?
IREN's up, I think it was close to 15% last time I looked. I'll just check now. Up 15.4%. So currently trading at $10.47, so a good 62 cents higher than what you've got on the board there. So, but you could have done that table about 6 times and still not got the right price for IREN. and some of these stocks today, IREN, Wolf, and particularly all 3 elements of the cores position. So you've got the core shares itself, then you've got the core warrants, the W class warrants, and you've got the core warrants, the Z class warrants. And they are effectively were given to those shareholders who held Core Scientific shares, before the company issued them. So if you had, I had a holding in Core Scientific. So if you had the old shares, you were given a new set of shares and 2 sets of warrants. And we can talk a little bit more about the warrants as we go through the program. I'll let people know at the point in time. But we've already passed the first 2 levels in terms of the W warrant and there's a private warrant out there as well. That was once that reached, I think it was under $6. There's a set that means it triggers the payment of those warrants then, but it has to be for 20 days. So 20 consecutive days above the warrant price, then it's automatically triggered, and that's the same for the second one. But
only 18 more days now, Anthony. No
more
18 more days.
But, I mean, who knows where this stops? And we've seen the likes of the I would say probably a slightly cheeky bid from CoreWeave of $1 billion to buy a cash bid to buy Core Scientific, which I'm assuming we've not heard a statement from the company yet, but I'm assuming it was sent back with a firm. I think
I did. Yeah, they turned down the unsolicited bid this morning. So let's get into these miners. I want to talk about Core Scientific. We've brought slides today, you guys, for every single miner, so we can talk about all of them under the sun. I see Hive, Mara, Bitfarms, Hut, Riot, IREN, all of those in the chat. We're going to get to all of them, but we want to wait for a few of them just till Sebastian gets here. Obviously, we want his take. You can see he's already in the chat watching here, you guys. He'll be here in about 30 minutes from now or 40 minutes from now. So first up, we've got 103 miners today, you guys. If you're not making money in the market today, in the Bitcoin sector, you're doing something wrong. So if the portfolio is looking good today, you guys, smash the like button for us. Hopefully everybody out there is in the black, making some money today. Quick refresher on what's come out this week. We had the CEO, Daniel Roberts of IREN on. He gave a great update, not only on earnings, on May production results, on their HODL outlook and strategy, but also on the aggressive growth that they see ahead of them. He actually said that getting to 30 exahash is essentially easy in his mind. They've got the buildings, they've got the blueprints, they've got the contractors. Now it's just rinse and repeat, keep building those buildings, keep plugging in the miners. Then we had the news from Core and CoreWeave, obviously a big announcement this week in terms of the M&A. That's what we're going to get into next. We had our good friend Ben Gagnon on from Bitfarms. So that's always a real treat for the channel. One of the smartest guys in the industry, Anthony, honestly, probably the sharpest CMO out there, and really shed some great light into the mining optics, the bid from Riot, and a lot of the internal workings of Bitfarms right now. So I would encourage you guys to take a look there. Really interesting about the synthetic HODL as well. So we'll get into that a little bit later. And then, of course, our weekly miner watch list. So that was just kind of kicking off the week, letting everyone know our plans. So let's get into it here, Anthony. People want to talk about Core Scientific. Let's see what we come up with. So first and foremost, last week when we put this out, I had said Core's quietly crosses the $5 mark. Now it's across the $7 mark. What's it trading right now, Anthony?
Trading now.
I think we're getting close to the $8 range here now.
So Core Scientific is at $8.01.
Oh, how fitting. So realistically, you guys, I should cross out the 7 as well.
Up 12% today.
That's phenomenal.
That's just the share. But if you look at the warrants, so the Core's W warrant is up 21% today at $3. And the Core Z warrant, not to be outdone, is up 24% at $5.95.
My goodness, it's going to be a nice weekend for Core Scientific holders here. So in terms of production, you guys, they came out with 447 mined Bitcoin in the month of May. That puts them just under 4,100 for the year. And right now they're operating just shy of 220,000 Bitcoin mining machines, Anthony, between what they own and host. So I can only imagine. I have trouble trying to figure out the wiring on my single computer to get 2 monitors to work. I cannot imagine the intricacy of 219,000 rigs constantly going. Just impressive. And we've talked about the consistency of Core Scientific as really one of their focal points. But this is where I wanted to get your opinion, Anthony. The transaction highlights. So CoreWeave came in here. They gave them a 12-year contract, you guys, a dozen years, valued at over $3.5 billion in revenue. Realistically, 200 megawatts is about just under 40% of their overall megawatts under management. So this is, Anthony, even among the big players, this is a deal we haven't even seen in this space in a while, eh? Absolutely.
And it was just interesting to see the information coming out. So we saw this the first day this contract coming out, and a fantastic contract. I mean, 12-year contract. I mean, we've seen other miners, they've come up with a 3-year contract, and you tend to think that's a sensible contract, but the difference with this one here is Core Scientific are providing infrastructure and they're providing power. So they're not providing the GPUs, so they haven't got to worry about GPUs not being efficient anymore or replacing them. They're providing facilities management, and they're providing a cheap source of energy to get those. We'll be going down to the Denton, the flagship facility, next Wednesday for a visit, and we'll be meeting with Adam and the team there. And so it will be, it'll be interesting to get their understanding of, especially, from a location perspective. And we talk about the requirement of power more so for AI, HPC services than we do for Bitcoin mining. You can get away with the Bitcoin mining because Bitcoin miners in general curtail when there's a requirement for the domestic market. With HPC and AI, there's a requirement for certain products to have literally uptime as close to 100% as you can, and people talk about the 5 nines. So curtailment position is something that we'll need to understand more when we go down and maybe pose that question to them. But it's a fantastic deal, $3.5 billion. And then we saw the literally, was it the day after, the offer came through for $1 billion, all cash. And I'm assuming that obviously then CoreWeave take on the debt, which is currently $608 million at the last time I looked. But today's prices now, we're talking. The company was valued yesterday at market capitalization about 1.3 billion, and with an increase today, you're getting close to 1.5 billion. Yes, they've still got the debt, but bear in mind now these shares, both of these warrants that will trigger significant amounts of capital going into Core Scientific. So it's very clever how they set up the warrants. Based on share price, and it incentivizes the individuals to keep the shares. They get to a certain point, they meet the criteria, they pay off the warrants at the stipulated price there. So in terms of the first warrant, that was $5.83, and they were a private placement or convertible note placement there. So that once that's triggered there, that brings in effectively $260 million to the company, which will then reduce the debt by 260. So all that debt will go away. That's 45 million shares worth of coverage there at $5.83. And then if the second set, the first set of warrants, so this is the Core W warrants, once the share price has reached $6.81 for a minimum of 20 days, then again, individuals will be required to pay that $6.81 to get the full share, and that brings in probably close to $600 million to the company, of which 348 million will go towards the debt, and that clears the debt, and it also gives them some cash of about 322 million to then start looking at how to go and expand. So
Anthony, let me just pause you there for a sec. So you guys, just to hit that one home, and keep in mind, there's companies out there that will go out and purchase these warrants. So these will be exercised if they're in the money. So if Coors is able to stay above 6, I think you said 81, Anthony, for 20 consecutive trading days, they've already done 2. So we have 18 more. They're going to wipe out all of their debt and have $300 million of cash on hand, plus be the miner that has mined the most Bitcoin over the last 3 years and one of the most consistent miners, plus came out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy just last year. So you guys, I just really want to hit that one home. I don't think a lot of people that are really looking at Coors for the first time understand all of these inner workings of these warrants. And to the general investor, you guys, you may look at this company and say, oh my God, they have $600 million of debt. And that's where the due diligence stops. But I think for our community here, who has a good understanding of Bitcoin mining, expected returns this cycle, and these warrants, this is definitely interesting, Anthony.
Absolutely. And if that first warrant is triggered, the debt becomes zero and gives the company cash runway. The other thing I like about Core Scientific is they show their production on a daily basis. So every day what they're mining in terms of Bitcoin. So during that month of May, we were getting regular updates, daily basis, 14, 15 Bitcoin every day. We know that, that they'll put out consistent mining updates every month, without fail. They weren't the biggest in terms of reduction in May, but they were in Q1 and they were for the last 3 years. So they've got great track record. And once they get out of the debt position, then the focus then will be on how to grow, and whether it's going to be grow the AR business, grow the Bitcoin business, grow both. But they've got options on the table now to do that.
Yeah, they sure do. Just a quick shout out, you guys. We got Sebastian coming in here in about 20 minutes for the Q&A portion. I also wanted to give a shout out to our good friend Gary here, Anthony. I think, Gary, you've probably put a comment on every single video we've done this year talking about how undervalued Core Scientific is. And it appears you've been right all along, buddy. So I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the support. And I sure hope you're making money today of anyone out of Core Scientific. Now, Anthony, next up here, another real banger this week was IREN. So this was another one, you guys. I could not even keep up with the ticker price moves this morning. So originally last week, we had said, wow, IREN just crossed $7. Then I redid the deck last night. I said, oh, wow, they're up to $9. Now Anthony says, you got to swap out the slide, buddy. They're over $10. I said, no way. I've already done it twice. So I don't know what IREN's at right now. They are up a lot. And they also came out with production results for the month of May here, Anthony. 230 Bitcoin, $15 million in revenue. As we know, they're a daily seller. So they're booking these revenues in real time. And some pretty exciting stuff on the H100 HPC side of things. So we talked to Daniel Roberts this week. Awesome interview. He is extremely confident, cool, calm, collected, and he feels like they have a clear path to this 30 exahash, eh?
Yeah, it was great to get Dan on the show. Another, if we were looking at the most anticipated speakers that people have been requesting, we had them both. We had Ben and we had Dan, and if you're looking at in terms of two of the probably top three most popular stocks that people are holding at the moment are Bitfarms and IREN, and rightly so. So another very consistent update from IREN today. 230 Bitcoin means they've produced more than Riot, and so when you're looking at total Bitcoin produced now, it's moving them up the table. Bear in mind, we have to go back 18 months ago, and IREN had something like 1.7 exahash. Now they're at 10, with a plan to get to 20 by the end of September. That's doubling their current hash rate position now in the next 4 months. They don't stop there. They're going to hopefully get to 30 by the end of the year, and another option to buy a further 10 exahash of mining machines from Bitmain in 2025. So they've got a target, of 40. A target of 30 exahash, that where effectively they've made all the orders, they've made all the prepayments, and there'll be some final payments to make on those miners. But this company's got $320 million on the balance sheet today, so they put that into their update as well. So they're very much in a very good cash position. Maybe looking to see what's out there in the market, if there's any opportunities arising there. And we talked about consolidation. And nothing is off the table now with the likes of when a company goes after Bitfarms, who are sort of like one of those top 6-7 miners. Everything's on the table. And actually, I even joked with Dan to ask him if he'd had any offers for IREN. Like, he says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you're the perfect miner for someone to go and buy if they've got the money. I mean, there's 2 or 3 miners out there that could probably go and buy you. Why wouldn't they? Because you've got facilities, you've got power." You've got a great, you've got a great business. You've got you're moving into the HPC space. Why wouldn't you look at a company like IREN to buy? It's perfect. And actually, when you look at the valuations of some of these companies, and I've put this on many articles and tweets, and people are also using these metrics that I sort of like put out there, a good while back, and looking at the sort of like the valuation of these companies from a terahash, from an exahash perspective. If we look at the sort of the sort of average, the floor of being 100 million per exahash, and IREN are about that figure now. Maybe I think they're 95 when I was speaking to Dan. But then you look at CleanSpark, and they're at like closer to 200. You look at Marathon Digital, close to 200. Look at Cipher, they're well over 100 million there. And then and Riot are well over 100 million. Then you've got some of these other ones like Bitfarms and IREN. We're hovering below 100. So what that means is it means that effectively you could buy businesses at a cheaper position than you've actually got in your own mining position at the moment. So these are sort of like discounted, and then you go down to the next level and you're looking at the likes of Hive Digital. So when we talk about 100 million as a floor, Hive's there, mining away as one of the top 2 in terms of operational performance at 18 million per exahash. So that's effectively you're buying Hive for a 20 cents on the dollar as it would cost you to buy IREN or effectively buy Bitfarms. So there is some real discounting out there, and some of the smaller miners will be on a par with Hive as well. So if you look at the likes of maybe Soluna Holdings, you look at the likes of Griffin Mining, you look at the likes of DMG. DMG might be a little bit more than Hive in terms of valuation. Their market capitalization isn't as low as some of the other ones. Also, trying trying to think of the other one we've got there. So it was Griffins, Soluna, SATO Technology as well.
Yeah.
If you look at some of these valuations from an X-hash position there, they're well below 50. And that means, you're into real, discounting phase. So we might see some consolidations. We might see some merger acquisitions. There was an article yesterday from JP Morgan that basically said, Riot are in the absolute best position to sort of start consolidating the Bitcoin mining space in North America, because they've got, well over 9,000 coins now held on the balance sheet. So at today's price, you're upwards there, $650 million. They've got more than that in cash on the balance sheet. So I think they've got a treasury position of $1.3 billion. And when you've got that sort of amount of money, it gives you opportunities to do certain things with it. And so JP Morgan said that, by doing that, they foresee that this market could go down to maybe 5 or 6 players and have some real consolidation. So when you say that there, who would the 5 or 6 players be? And so that's why, again, I was, having a joke with Dan, but there was an element of seriousness in to say that I'm sure your phone's been ringing, because, everything you do is right. So, but good set of results. Also, the fact they've announced on this update, they're getting about just under $1 million in revenue from their HPC. So that's good to see as well. We don't normally always get that from miners, what they're doing in their other businesses. These were predominantly for the last 3 years all about self-mining, but Sam Tabar from Bit Digital changed that when he started, announcing what he was doing with his HPC business. And I think what's happening now is others are coming through and saying, well, we like what we see there, and actually we're doing similar things, and we're going to put our numbers on there. So, really good update from IREN. Now operating with 260 megawatts as well. So that's, from a power point of view, they've got to now grow another 250 megawatts in this next phase now to get this, to get to 20 exahash, and then a further growth, and to get to 30 by the end of the year. So they've got a lot of work on, but we know it's predominantly all on the same site. And the good thing as well was, Dan says, we're going to start replacing some of those older miners, some of those original S19 miners that are effectively twice inefficient, or half the efficiency of the current S21 Pro. So you can basically take out one box, put another box in that actually does twice as much. So from a space perspective, they're not having to grow all their sites to cope with the extra exahash. It's actually, they can literally double exahash in some of their centers by just replacing the miners with the new miners that are coming in, and then they'll make a decision whether to keep miners or to sell them, for cash, and just to raise funds to keep the hamster wheel going around.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Anthony, Dan actually said that it's the same wiring, the same voltage and everything, so they don't need to they don't have to redo any infrastructure there. It's literally unplug one, put the next one in, and you're getting a 2-for-1.
And it shows on today's update. Go to today's update. The link, we'll have the link there in the comments. Go to today's update and have a look. It shows how they're going to grow to 30, and how much of that is actually replacing machines. So really strong, really good update. Gives you a lot of information in there about all their services. So well worth a read.
Yeah, IREN is firing on all cylinders. You guys watch the interview if you haven't. Sebastian just messaged. He's going to be here in about 5 to 10 minutes. So we'll get his take on IREN, of course. But we wanted to move into some of the other top headlines this week. So TeraWulf was another one that I just saw a comment saying Wolf is the next IREN. Let's go Wolfpack. We've got a number of TeraWulf fans in here, including myself. And this one, Anthony, we've got a couple of images here of their Lake Mariner facility. So they're continuing to progress. They are really making strong strides forward. They also came out with their production and operational update. And as you mentioned, this is another one that's been up, I think, excess of 10%, probably 3 days this week. A lot of interest in TeraWulf. These guys are longtime operators in the energy space. Paul Prager has deep connections with the energy companies here, you guys. And that's why they're able to get those drastically cheaper energy rates. So what's your thoughts on the Wolfpack right now, TeraWulf, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, everything's going well this year for them. They've got to 8 exahash. They're getting closer to that 10 exahash target. which they should be achieving, by the midpoint of the year. Their target for the end of 2024, I think, is about just over 13 exahash. We'll start seeing some more payments coming off the debt, and so bringing that down there. They've got a bit of a cash position as well, so from equivalency position there, some of the cash out, it will take away some of the debt there. So it's a good company. It's got one of the lowest energy costs of all the miners. That's a blended price there of 3.9 cents kilowatt hour. That we know the Nautilus site, which operates at 50 megawatts, is about 2 cents kilowatt hour, and that runs 24/7, 365 days a year. There's no curtailment there. And then you've got Lake Mariner, which is more of a market price, so a little bit higher than 3.9, but the blended price altogether is really good. And if you look at that power cost there, 31,000 per Bitcoin, this is exactly what Paul was saying on the podcast. And look at the price today, Bitcoin price, they have just over 71,000. That gives them 40,000 margin to pay some of those operating costs. So pay the staff, pay the the G&A costs, pay that interest payment as well, but that's going down. And some of that debt will be held within the management team there. So they've got an energy company as well. So there's lots of moving parts with TeraWulf, but from a production, from a position, and bear in mind, energy is the most expensive cost a miner will face. Energy price there will they've got one of the cheapest rates, so they're in a good position. And as we see that debt come down, we'll see that the share price even do better. And if you think about the effect that we had the price on Bitfarms, it wasn't that long ago we were looking at Bitfarms. It wasn't too long ago when we were saying Bitfarms might have to consolidate shares because it was dropping close to under the dollar a share, which is the Nasdaq ruling there. So today over $2.50. So TeraWulf in the same light, if they get that debt down as they've planned it to, and they've made every payment as they suggested, so we're expecting another payment. I think it's in July. But they're making great margins to do that. So the profit they're making every day, that's what they said they're going to use it for, to get the debt down, grow what they've said they've planned this year. They've still got the opportunity to grow at both sites, so they can do a phase 5 at Lake Mariner and build out at Nautilus to another 50 megawatts there. We'll probably hear more updates about Nautilus and the new owner there, and whether they can still have a relationship with them, or whether they come and make an offer to buy out TeraWulf. And TeraWulf, for a public company, of course they'll listen to an offer. It has to be a good offer for Paul, though. I wouldn't like to play poker with Paul. He's probably got knows his stuff, and he's not going to sell out cheaply. And now that we see,
Anthony, he confirmed in that interview it is AWS in there, and he said to me, realistically, if you have Amazon knocking on your door with a buyout offer, that's a pretty good problem to have these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I just see a couple comments about Bitfarms, you guys. We're going to circle back to Bitfarms and cores as soon as Sebastian gets here. We want to get his take as well, but we were getting a lot of questions about TeraWulf. Next one up, you guys, we'll just keep going through them here in no particular order. Bitdeer was another one that made some big moves this week, Anthony. This is one, I would say, probably one of the little less understood companies in the space. There's a lot of angles to Bitdeer. They've obviously got the seal miner, they've got the hardware, they've got multiple different revenue streams. Now they've also got an investment from Tether for $100 million. So basically 5 million shares. And then there's an additional option to exercise $50 million. At that $10 price. So that was a huge announcement in its own. And then now they've announced some M&A activity today as well, Anthony. So Bitdeer definitely taking part in the action this week, eh?
Absolutely. And Bitdeer just announced, I think it was during April or towards the end of April, that was their year on the Nasdaq. So that gave them an opportunity then to have the ability to raise funds via an ATM. You have to do a minimum of 12 months before you're allowed to do that. You can't join the Nasdaq and start diluting straight away. So they did their time. They have an ATM in place as well. They're not said they're using it straight away. But when you look at these two deals they've done now, that brings capital into the company. They've issued 20 million shares to acquire this Bitcoin design company, Bit mining design company, and that puts the valuation at about 140 million. When we look at Bitdeer and we look at all these mining companies, Bitdeer as a self miner represents about 40% of the company. So when you look at the market capitalization, between 700-800 million. You effectively, it's like less than half the company in terms of self-mining. So they've got other businesses. They have hosted business. They have a cloud hash rate business. They now are building their own machines. They've now got a company that will help them design and build more machines. And I think this company, they've got some like 30,000 miners with an efficiency of just over 20 joules a terahash. So some, a whole batch of, really efficient miners, not as efficient as the S21s, but far more efficient than say like the XPs. Bitdeer is certainly one that people need to do a little bit more research on, find out more about the company. In terms of revenues, they're in that sort of like top 3, top 4 companies, because as I said, if 45% is, or less is the self-mining element, just think of what the revenues are coming through from. Like, they've got a big hosting business. They're growing some big sites in Norway, in Bhutan. They've just broken ground in Ohio. So they're going to be, in 12 months' time, middle of next year, they're going to have over a gigawatt of power under management, well over a gigawatt of power under management there. They've moved into the HPC space. They're going to expand the HPC space now. So they've had the trial, and now they're looking to sort of say, look, this is working. We're going to expand the services here as well. So they're looking at sort of many, many different directions. Some Bitcoin mining purists will say that's too many, but the proof will be in the numbers when they come out. Bear in mind, you have got a number of this team that were formerly part of the Bitmain team. So Bitdeer in 2020 was Bitmain. And there was obviously some disagreements between the two co-founders, and Jihan Wu, who's the CEO of Bitdeer, was able to move away and form the company Bitdeer, and they've grown to be a good miner with great services, and the thing I like about it is that they've got the flexibility to transition into whatever's doing well at the market. So they don't have like long contracts with even host partners there. They've got flexible contracts where, if it means in a bull cycle, self-mining is the best, they have the opportunity to do that. In a bear market, the hosting business has become really good cash generators. So keep companies afloat, because they'll still bring in a margin for the company. You might not be getting great margins on self-mining, but with the hosting, you have a contract there, and you're getting a good margin what you're providing. So the company that's being hosted, they take on the burden if the Bitcoin price drops or the energy price tends to rise. It's the risk is with them, but the host company have a contract in place. So definitely one you need to do more research on. I've done an article on Bitdeer, so go and have a look at that through the Compass website. I covered all the services that they do, and that was only, I think, 2 months ago, so I think it was April. Have a look at it. It gives you a lot of information in there. It gives you a lot of numbers as well. One I strongly recommend people, do some more analysis on.
One to watch. Another one to watch. Who let this guy in? It's Sebastian. Just came in the back door here on the lunch break. How are you doing, buddy?
Doing good. You guys got to lock up the place a little bit better. It's easy to get in.
Holy bud. Yeah, I guess so. I wanted to see if you smashed the like button. If you're making money today, Sebastian, you're supposed to hit the like button on the way in. I would imagine you're looking pretty good in your portfolio, eh?
Yeah, things are looking up. It's nice to see. We're kind of in a downtrend a little bit for a couple of months there after the new year a little bit and into the halving, but now it's starting to pick up a little bit. It's starting to get fun again.
Yeah, most definitely. Hey, we talked about Bitfarms a little bit, Core Scientific. We wanted to get your take on those as well, but we have beaten track here saying that Bit Digital doesn't get any attention. So I want to put that one to bed first. Maybe Sebastian, we can get your take on Bit Digital. I know you were chatting about them on your channel there a little bit. We've put together a slide for each miner, Sebastian. So we'll be able to kind of go through as the questions come up. Bit Digital, you guys, this is one we've talked about a lot. We've had Sam Tabar on the program. They've got the flywheel. You can see there the Ethereum staking in the bottom right-hand side. They just came out with their May production results as well, just north of 63 Bitcoin. This is really a beast in the making here. Sam's got a good outlook, a good head on his shoulders, and a well-differentiated business model. So, Sebastian, I'm not sure if you're invested in this one, but what are your thoughts on Bit Digital and their May numbers?
I haven't really looked into their main numbers yet because they just came out today. So normally my lunch break I'd be doing this, but I'm here with you guys, so I'll give you guys some of my thoughts on Bit Digital really quick. I
Sure.
like what they're doing and everything else. I like that they have the AI business. It's 50 million right now. It's going to possibly go to 100 million potentially for them as well a year. So that's really good. They were the first ones really to get a huge contract like that. Now we've seen with Cores getting a much bigger contract where they're getting like 290 million a year potentially from CoreWeave. So those are like the really two AI plays right now in the space, it seems like, currently at least. I know we have other companies that are dabbling in it right now, but my main thing for this year is growth in hash rate for the miners, right? So if they're not really growing, I'm not really looking into them that much as far as an investment. So for that reason, I'm not investing in Bit Digital because of their growth this year. It's going to be, they're saying that they're going to get to 6 exahash for their self-mining, but that's only double from where they are right now. And if you look at other companies like Bitfarms, IREN, CleanSpark, Marathon, Riot, they're all going to above 20 exahash and north of that. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at things right now. And they're definitely not getting valued for their AI business currently as it is, nor for their really self-mining business.
Yeah, it seems like the AI, the infrastructure, and the revenue side of it, the market is just trying to now figure out how to kind of price that stuff in. You mentioned high growth miners there, Sebastian. Riot was one of them that you mentioned. We haven't touched on Riot yet, so I'll jump over to them as well. They came out with May production at obviously 215 Bitcoin, just under 15 deployed hash rate. And we came out with news, I think this morning, that they've now moved up to a 12% position in Bitfarms. So I'm curious to get both of your thoughts on this one. Sebastian, you're the guest, so we'll let you go first. You talk about high growth miners. Doesn't get much higher growth than Corsicana, hey?
Yeah, Corsicana, they have huge potential there, 1 gigawatts of potential to build out into. So that is huge there. They are currently, what are they at? 14 something, right, Anthony?
14.7.
Yeah, 14.7 right now. Energization of that has been kind of slow, or at least their average for the month in Corsicana was only 1.4 exahash on average they were operating.
You're about 3.7 plugged in, but you're right, only just over 1 exahash actually operational.
Yeah.
For the whole period. Yeah.
So I can understand that they're plugging machines and you're not going to have a full month of operations there. So what I really want to see is what does the June numbers look like once they're all in there? Are they operating at a much closer uptime to 100%? If not, that's a growing concern there with them, as it was with Rockdale facility as well, right? They haven't really operated very well out of that facility for over the last 16, 18 months or so. So that's an issue that we want to have cleared up. And you guys had Jason on there, and Jason knows about the issues, and they're working to get those resolved. And hopefully they do get those resolved. If they get those resolved, I think at that point they will do much better going forward. But right now, their operations have not been great.
What we need to see is the 4 exahash of miners at Rockdale that aren't operating efficiently removed and replaced with the new micro BT orders that they've got in place. So when we see that 15.1 exahash target for the end of June, it needs to be 15.1 of operating miners. You can't include 4 exahash of miners that aren't working for you. So, they come out there with 14.7 exahash of mining capacity, but only 8.8 was their average. And this month, IREN mined more Bitcoin than Riot. And I know people out there will say straight, well, we've got the 7 million of energy credits, and that's a great, it's a great strategy, at the moment. But when the Bitcoin price is rising, I'm assuming people want to see production of Bitcoin. We've looked at the numbers before, and if you'd have not curtailed and mined the Bitcoin, you might have been in a better position. But it does bring down the cost of the energy. We're looking at miners here. We want to see production numbers, and we want to see, we saw, numbers from Marathon this month that started to feel a little bit more what they're capable of doing. And that's not something we've seen for quite a while. There's only been a couple of months in the last couple of years that have raise my eyebrows with the Marathon Digital update on a monthly basis. And one of those was December. I mean, it broke every record in the book in December, but you know, hasn't got anywhere near that. But this month we sort of, you know, they've got now, I think, just under 26 operating of their 30. They've got 30 plugged in, so they're over 30 exahash there. And they've got, you know, nearly 26 of it working, and they come up with a good total of over 600 Bitcoin. Now, if you think pre-halving, that would be, you know, 1,200 Bitcoin. So again, it'd be a good figure. But remember, in December they produced 1,853. So still down on December's number, whichever way you look at it.
Now, both of you guys, what do you make of this Bitfarms play here? Because we saw them come in, they were just shy of 10%. They announced their intentions, $2.30, not going to cut it. Bitfarms already trading above that. Now they've come in and said, hey, you know what? We're going to just keep buying shares. They're up to 12%. What do you think's going on here?
They're buying shares because they want to get seats on the board. So once they have a certain number, they'll be able to formally request that they have, you know, some of their own team put as directors on the board of Bitfarms. And, you know, bear in mind, Bitfarms just had a vote on their own directors last week, and one of them was removed. One of the co-founders was removed as a director. So I don't know. We actually mentioned it to Ben on the podcast. You know, was it a case of Riot using their power of the amount of shares they had to maybe get rid of one of the directors? And then he said, well, the shares have to be in place by a certain period, so we need a bit more information to understand, did Riot have the ability to vote at that deal? But they're certainly, you know, increasing the number of shares, and we've just articulated, Sebastian, that these companies have such big daily volumes that you wouldn't be able to notice it. If you're buying 1 million shares of Bitfarms in a day in you know, 2 or 3 tranches, it wouldn't even make a ripple in terms of, you know, they're trading 20 to 30 million shares a day. So by Riot buying, I think they made, you know, a couple of purchases of, you know, 1.5 million one day, 1.5 million the next day. It's not making an impact, you know. But it's interesting that they're still buying. Whether they, you know, continue to buy, you know, to buy shares, and I think, you know, obviously the offer has to be higher because the share price is now, it was last time I looked, over $2.50, and that's you know, 20 cents higher than their original offer. But I think even most people in the space now realize, you know, you're not going to get a company that's, and it's not just about being 7 exahash, it's about ordering machines to get to 21. Yes, they've still got to make 150 million in final payments, which was on their balance sheet, so 156 million, I think it is, but that gets them to 21 exahash. So you can't be looking at it, you're not buying a 7 exahash company, you're buying a company with a real possibility of getting, you know, 3 times that by the end of the year.
Yeah, increasing infrastructure, everything else that goes into it, right? So their value goes up on that.
Yeah.
And then if Bitcoin goes up in value as well, there goes their whole market cap because of it. So yeah, I mean, I watched the Ben interview with you guys that you guys had on. I thought it was a great interview. Ben even has stated, right, that the price was too low for him to accept it, the offer that they got, right, which I agree. I mean, I still see Bitfarms going 5 to 10x here easily, if they can obviously meet their goals of getting to 21 exahash. So why would you sell a company at $2.35 when you know it's going to be worth, you know, at least maybe 5x from where it is right now? It just doesn't make any sense.
I think there's a level to what a company would pay. So, you know, I mean, I saw some notes going out there, not going to sell before it gets, you know, unless it gets to 7. I think, you know, if you had Bitfarms shares at 7 and then looked at the sort of, I've already indicated that the you know, at their share price at the moment, the value of their exahash is about 100 million, just over 100 million per exahash. If you said, well, let's go to $5, that will put it at 200 million per exahash. That's more than Marathon and CleanSpark. So people need to take things in sort of like, you know, manage, you know, we keep saying it's manage expectation, but, you know, an offer of say between $3 and $4 wouldn't be a miss, because it's not just 7 exahash. It's you know, he's actually at 9.5 exahash now. So they've actually, you know, got 9.5 plugged in. He says we'll get to 12 by the end of July, the end of June or there and thereabouts. And then, you know, there's a push then, and the final 5 exahash in Paraguay comes online towards the end of the year. But the markets will look at this, and retail investors will be razor focused on all these mining companies that have said they're coming out with these big targets. Because we've had Dan on as well and said, like, you've got a massive target to achieve. What's your feelings? And Dan's going, it's just a number. He was like,
well, and I guess, Anthony,
it's just a number.
At the end of the day, like, I guess the question is, does it even matter if they purchase the whole company? If Bitfarms is going up to 12 exahash and Riot owns 10% of that company, effectively Riot has.
It could be a really good move in terms of, if we don't get the deal, we can sell our shares and make a nice profit on that. Bear in mind, they bought, sorry, Sebastian, they bought some of these shares, in that sort of $2.15 to $2.25 range. So even now, they're probably 10-15% up. Yeah,
it's a win-win for them. Buy the company, you win. You don't win. You don't buy the company, you have plenty of shares. Let's say the stock goes up 5x. You win that way either way. So it's a win-win for them.
It's taken our retail trades to the next level. Now, question from Jane Smith: is Riot required to curtail? My understanding is no. They choose to when the economics are there. So yeah, as the price of Bitcoin goes up,
not true. No, Bryce, no. So there's two things. Okay. Riot are required to curtail as part of the 4CP program. So all the miners that are part of that program are required to curtail. They get told that the times that they're going to curtail. So it is on a sort of like a daily basis. It's during the peak, and it could be like 20 minutes, half an hour. So there are periods during each day, and the miners know about this in advance, so they'll curtail those periods there. The additional times is what they choose is when they can turn off because the power spikes, and therefore they have an ability then to stop what they're doing, and then they can resell the option on that back to the market, and you get the sort of the power sales then. But the demand response credits, that's what they receive as part of their part of the 4CP. And the likes of Cipher, the likes of Argo, Bitdeer, also mining in Texas on that same program as well. But Riot, articulate on a monthly basis how much they're benefiting from each of those programs. And in the month of May, it was over $7 million. So yes, they didn't mine as many Bitcoin as IREN, but if you equate those sales and enhanced demand response credits, it took their notional revenues to 21 million. So it was like 6 million more than IREN in terms of benefit. Now we'll know those power sales will be discounted against future power costs, but it's the same. It's the same position. You're either reducing your costs or increasing revenues. It's the same. Works out the same position.
So sorry. So thank you for the correction, Anthony. And just to be clear, then, so we would expect the voluntary curtailment time to drop and credits as the price of Bitcoin goes up, correct?
This next 4 months now, we'll see Riot curtailing like they did last year significantly. And if everyone remembers the August update last year, if you haven't, have a look at August update, $31 million in sales and credits for 1 month. That was more than any miner mined in the month. So, just alone. And he still mined, an element of Bitcoin that month as well. We weren't curtailing for the whole month, but yeah.
Hey, Sebastian, we don't have a slide for CleanSpark, but we're getting a few questions. I wanted to get your take. I know you sold a bit of your position, which I also misquoted, so I guess I've had a few mistakes. You sold 20%, I believe.
Yep.
We've got a question from Grizzly talking about the performance of CleanSpark versus some of these other miners. So I'll bring up a chart here, you guys, just showing the price action currently. Sebastian, what are your thoughts on CleanSpark right now and the relative underperformance compared to some of the IRENs, some of the cores out there that are really seeing significant month-over-month returns?
Well, you got to take into consideration CleanSpark had a nice rally before everybody else did, right? They were getting more appreciated for the growth they're having, getting to 32 exahash and then now 50 exahash. So they had that price appreciation happen before the other miners did. Like IREN. IREN came out just recently. They're getting to 30 exahash this year, 40 exahash next year. So take that into account. Also, we've had the halving event, I think, which also impacted it as well. And it's just been kind of trading sideways right now. The investors, I believe, are waiting on news as far as infrastructure is concerned, right? Where are they going to be buying infrastructure to get to the 32 exahash and then the 50 exahash on top of it? So we need to see that. I think if we get news on that and a clear pathway for them to reach it by the end of the year potentially, and then I think the stock will do very well going forward. But right now, it's just kind of in the doldrums because of just some missing information, unfortunately.
We'll still wait here on this recent site. Is it Wyoming?
Yeah,
close to the military base, about 30 yards from the military base or something like that. And
well, that's the one that's still in question there, right?
It's not. It's apparently CleanSpark saying it's not. We're not the issue. It was another company, and so it should still go ahead for them, but it's still got to be ratified. And the trouble for some of the miners with these big machine orders and big growth targets is if they haven't got the sites, that's the bottleneck now.
Yep.
Finding sites. Riot and IREN have got two massive sites. They just keep building out them sites that they're in. Of course, you can't, like you've already said, Sebastian, 1 gigawatt. That's going to last them 24 and 25.
Yeah.
IREN have got Childress, so they're only operating 100 megawatts of the 600 at the moment. So they've got another 500 to go there, and the plan is to utilize all that to get to 30 exahash. So that's not the issue for them. It's more a case of, are they going to do it in the time frame? Are they going to be, and bear in mind, you'll just bring in extra workers to, it's on one site there. It's construction. It should be manageable to do. We've seen some of these big sites go up in 6, 7. Helios was built in 7 months from scratch.
Yeah.
So it can be done. That was a 200 megawatt facility. We can see, these facilities go up there, but they'll have to go up quickly because it's taken, probably over a year to get the 100 megawatts completed. So we'll see ramping up there. But CleanSpark, they've got them. No one's got a problem with miners. It's not the miners going to be the issue. It's about where you're going to put them.
Yeah.
And who's going to be the first one that says they're not going to quite get there. And history tells you most of them will say they're not going to get there when it gets closer to the date. History will tell. History determines that. There's only been a couple of miners in the last 2 years, Sebastian, who've actually made their target. You can name obviously the two that spring to mind. CleanSpark was 2 years ago. 2022, they achieved the 6 exahash. IREN did it last year. Outside of that, very few have reached a target that they've said. Very few.
Yeah.
Now, Sebastian, did you flip your CleanSpark into IREN?
I did. Yeah.
So I thought so. And I wanted to get your take on IREN. Anthony, you just mentioned them as well. We had the Daniel Roberts interview this week, you guys. We can get your take on cores next, Sebastian. But IREN, we were joking in the intro here. I've had to make this slide like 5 times because they keep blowing through these price targets. Last we looked, they were over $10. IREN's really been firing on all cylinders here. You can see they're up almost 100% in the past month alone. So I don't know if it was your trade there, Sebastian, or what happened, but pretty much when that video came out, it seemed that the steam came out of CleanSpark's tires and was directly injected to the IREN engine. What made you make that move, and why do you think the market is now seeing this potential in IREN?
Well, I think the market started seeing the potential in IREN when they came out with the report that they're going to be upping their timeline to get the 20 exahash and then getting the 30 exahash by the end of the year, right? Even though they came out with an ATM also on the same day, the market kind of shrugged that off and like, okay, we got growth coming in here. We're getting into this miner now. And that was kind of my thought on it. I've been trying to get into IREN since November, December of last year. Started slowly getting into it, buying small positions like 50 shares to there, 100 shares there, because I wanted to get into Bitfarms more heavily because I thought Bitfarms was more undervalued at that time. And then as time went on, we're seeing all this FUD and everything else, and I'm seeing IREN still kind of lagging. And then when we got the news, it's like, man, I wish I would have bought more IREN also. So I should have probably went 50-50 on Bitfarms and IREN at the same time. I didn't do that. So I was like, okay, let's correct this. I was up like 400% on CleanSpark at the time. I'm like, all right, let me pull the money out that I put into it, 20% of it or so. I'm like, take that out and dump it all into IREN right away because I knew this thing was going to go taking off. And it did. So I'm up already like 50% on IREN right now.
Good for you, buddy. And that was just your initial capital that you pulled out of CleanSpark. Now you're playing with house money, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anthony, I want to jump to Core Scientific, but did you have any other thoughts on IREN before we skip here?
No, I mean, I've had them in my analysis for, since they became a public miner back in, September 2021. I spoke to Dan that year when nobody knew IREN, and so people sometimes question why we have some smaller miners that we cover, but IREN were a really small miner when I started. They were less than 0.5 exahash for months and months and months, and then they started growing. Then they had the issue with NIDIG, handed back the machines, got rid of the debt, And now they've built up a company which is 10 exahash, and it's a top tier miner, and it's happened in 18 months. So when people say, "Oh, what are you covering them for?" They could be the next IREN. We go back 3 years ago, Sebastian. Me and Sebastian were in space 3 years ago, and we looked at the likes of Riot, and we looked at Marathon Digital, and they were smaller than Argo and Bitfarms at the time, in terms of hash rate. And look where they are now. It can change really quickly. The hash rate growth this year is just exponential. We've never seen anything like this. We're looking at targets to get to 5 exahash, a year ago for some of these miners. Now it's like, we joked, Bryce, on podcasts saying, the new level for the top tier is 10 exahash. No, it's not. It's probably 20 exahash now, because there's so many miners going past 10. Yep. You have to create a new target at the top there. So there's going to be, by the end of this year, 5 miners, over 20 exahash, and go back 18 months ago and see how many were in double figures. Only probably one of them, Core Scientific was the biggest miner for the last 3 years. Then Marathon managed to get their target up. But bear in mind, 18 months ago, they were probably, I think, 7 exahash, and they've grown, that they are now, but it can happen really quickly. If you get things right, it can happen really, really quickly. And so, who knows where the next one's coming on. It's going to be a challenge. I think that the market's changed now. The halving affects the amount of revenues they get. We talked about growth, how the smaller miners can grow. But I think some of these have been really good. CleanSpark and IREN have both utilized the opportunities that have been given to them really, really well. And the market's picked up on them. And when you see all these polls that are on Twitter and other social media channels saying which stocks are you looking at the moment, the 3 that come out top near every time is Bitfarms, IREN, and CleanSpark. And if you go back 2 years ago, it was Riot and Marathon, and you go back 3 years ago, it was Hut, Hive, and Argo. Argo had a massive following. 3.5 years ago, Sebastian. You remember those days, don't you?
Yeah.
Sebastian, how are you doing on time there, buddy? Do you have time for cores?
Yeah, I got time. I still have about 20 minutes or so.
Okay, great. So yeah, let's talk cores, because this was another one that just really put the company on the map this week, not only with the share price. So again, same situation, Sebastian. Last week we did this, they crossed 5, now 7. Now we've got the warrants coming into play, the potential to eliminate the debt. They came out with really good numbers for the month of May, which are pretty much expected from Core Scientific at this point. And obviously, you alluded to it, this massive deal with CoreWeave, 12-year contract, $3.5 billion. So I'll throw the contract details up. Curious to get your 2 cents on this one, Sebastian. Do you hold cores?
I do now. Yeah, I bought it this week.
Yeah, actually,
I've
did
been
too.
talking about it for a long time. I've been talking since they were in bankruptcy. I'm like, the way things were looking at them at that point, they were way undervalued. They got down to 4 cents at one point per share. I'm like, this is just nuts. They're doing all the right things, but they made mistakes back in 2022 and things like that. They were spending too much money on private airfare and all this other stuff that the management there was taking too much out of the company.
It's called living the dream.
Yeah, they were living too large. But that's obviously what caused the company to have a downfall. Adam has done a fantastic job. The guy has done a fantastic job turning the company around from bankruptcy and getting the ship righted. So I've been talking about them for at least right now 6-8 months or something like that, where I think they're way undervalued. And I just wanted to see at least a quarter or two of the financial results to see how they're doing after bankruptcy. And things were looking really good after Q1. We got the numbers. So I'm like, okay, let's see if we can get another good quarter of it. And at that point, I would probably pull the trigger. But then when the news came out that they got this $3.5 billion contract with CoreWeave, I'm like, okay, this is turning this company way around. Now is the time to get in before things start to really rocket. And I did put in like $3,500-$4,000 into it, which is what I had left basically to invest. So I got into it, happy with that. I'm up what am I up right now? Like 30% on it right now as of right now. So I'm still doing really good on it.
Seb, I almost copied your move exactly with CleanSpark. I sold a portion of mine and flipped into cores just this morning. Same as you. I've been watching this one from the sideline. As we say, Gary comments on every video we've ever done telling me how undervalued it is. I've been watching it. I've been talking to Anthony. I've been saying I need to do this, Same deal as you.
I can give you a couple of analogies here. So in Amsterdam last year, when I was at the Bitcoin conference there, I was talking to, I think, 6 or 7 of the execs of the mining companies. So there's about 8 or 9 mining companies there, and there was a group of them: Marathon, Riot, Bitfarms, not Core Scientific. And I said, I always ask, when I get a group together like that, I said, who are you looking at the moment? Which company are you looking at in terms of like who's taking your interest? And every one of them, Core Scientific. And they were buying, these were execs buying Core Scientific shares. And then I went to London this year, and at the AIM Summit there, and there was 10 of the North American miners at the AIM Summit there, and I got to meet Adam Sullivan for the first time, and great, and Russell Camford, who's the Chief Mining Officer for Core Scientific, and so I had a good chat with both of them. Had an extensive chat with Adam, really, really good, and we're going to be seeing Adam next week at the Denton facility. But I was sat next to a chap there, and he's very knowledgeable in the space. I'm not going to mention his name, but we were chatting away, and he asked me, and we were talking about Core Scientific, and he said, what's the share price? I said, oh, it's just dropped below $3. And he went, hang on a second, and he got out his phone, and he bought $60,000, 60,000 shares, or $60,000 worth of shares in that minute. They said that's too cheap for this company, And he's a mover and shaker. I was buying last year. I was buying, early last year and throughout the year, bought 2 or 3 purchases of Core. So I'm quite happy with my position at the moment. It's my second, in fact, now it's my second biggest position in mining now. It's overtaken quite a few of them. But this last few weeks has just been, phenomenal. And actually, we're getting close now to the second tranche, to the second warrant tranche level, which so it's currently trading. The Core Scientific share is trading at $8.01 at the moment. So
incredible.
It's not got that far to go before it's still got to go 20 days consecutively before it's triggered. But it just gives you an indication that there's 5 years for that to happen. That's how long Core Scientific left in the plan. It's going to happen quite quickly. It's going to happen quite quickly.
I agree. And Beaten Track, thanks for the support there, buddy. Not letting me get down on myself. Now, Sebastian, is there any other stocks specifically burning that you want to cover here? We've got pretty much a slide for all the miners. If not, we'll just start going through in order.
I would just add on top of Cores that this deal solidifies their growth going forward. It basically makes them, I guess, things can always go bad, but I think with the current deal that they have at Core, with CoreWeave, they're basically going to be fine for the next 12 years. You got $290 million coming in. Unless they squander it and go party like a rock star again, they should be fine. And then I was talking about this on Monday when the news came out. I'm like, if CoreWeave is giving him a $3.5 billion contract for 12 years, what's stopping them from basically trying to maybe buy the company out? And sure enough, within like 12 hours, we got the news that CoreWeave came in with an offer, right? It was a low offer, but it was an offer nonetheless. So I think CoreWeave did the right thing. I think they came in, got the contract there first for the hosting, and then they put in an offer potentially, which then you kind of solidify your position there. Regardless if you buy the company or not, you have that contract in place, and you have a place for all your HPCs, which is nice. So they did the right way. Now, will CoreWeave come back with the counter offer, maybe offer $10 per share? I mean, they got the money for it. They could do it. So it'll be interesting to see if they do anything like that.
Yeah, it definitely will. These bids are really interesting to me, Sebastian. That $1 billion, like you literally just said, we're going to spend $3.5 billion on you for 40% of your infrastructure, and then now you're saying we'll buy the rest of it for $1 billion. It seemed just way low to me, but who knows about the positioning as you talk about there. So we'll stay tuned for that one. Sebastian, any specific company you want to touch on next?
No, I mean, they're all doing pretty good today, except for a couple. Looks like Mara's down a little bit today right now. CleanSpark's down. Bitfarms down a little bit too. Things are kind of starting to change over a little bit, but I mean, it's exciting to be in this space right now. But yeah, any company you guys want to cover, I'm fine with it.
It most definitely is. Yeah, I'll skip ahead here. We talked about Bit Digital here. There was one. Yeah, Bitfarms. I got this one in here. I think this is probably worth a discussion too. So we've talked about the agreement with Riot, but if we look at Bitfarms as a standalone player, you guys, they are making significant upgrades in their fleet. As you mentioned, Anthony, they're supposed to be at 12 exahash by June here. let's just park the Riot M&A discussion for a second. If we take that out of the equation, Sebastian, do you think they're going to be able to get to this target? Because Bitfarms traditionally has struggled with growth. You say that you're really looking for growth in miners. Do you think they're going to be able to tackle this one here, 21 exahash?
I think so. They're at 9.5 right now installed, not energized, but installed. So they're waiting for the power company in Paraguay to connect to them basically and test the equipment there. So once that's done, I'm guessing that's going to be done in the next week or so. That'll get them to 9.5 exahash. That's not too far away from the 12 that they're getting to, and they're working at the other facilities as well to get to 12 exahash. So I think if they can do that by June, getting to 21 exahash within the next 6 months for them should not be a problem, I think, based on just what we're seeing, the current execution that they have right now. So yeah, I would say I would have a 90% chance of them hitting the target.
And what about the CEO situation? That's another one that was a pretty hot topic here. Do you have any indication of who that might be, internal, external? Do you think the M&A has anything to do with that situation? If they are considering selling, do they need a new CEO? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know if they would consider selling unless, I mean, if they were desperate, then yes, maybe they would consider selling. But I don't think they're desperate to sell. They're doing fine financially and everything else, and they got plenty of growth going forward. So I believe that they believe that the stock is going to do much better going forward. The only thing with the CEO search now with the M&A in question is how do the CEOs that are potentially interviewing for that position looking at it as going, well, what am I going to get in there, be for their CEO for a month or two, and then I'm going to be out?
Yeah, good
right?
angle.
So that could be a little constraint there as well. I think they need to clear up that M&A as much as they can. I don't know how they can do that, figure a way to do that. And then you might have a good chance of getting a good CEO there that's going to be there for a while.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, great. Well, I know you're cutting her close here, Sebastian, so feel free to drop whenever you need to. We really appreciate you dropping in today. Great to get your insight on the core situation, IREN. Glad to see that you're on board with both of those. And yeah, we wish you all the success, buddy, and appreciate the support.
Yeah, no problem. It's into you guys, but I still have a couple more minutes here. You guys want to talk about really quick? Did you guys talk about Cipher increasing their hash rate?
I've seen a few comments, and that's actually one that I picked up as well pretty recently here. We don't cover Cipher on our channel, Sebastian, but we've seen a bunch of questions about it just recently. So let's talk Cipher.
Yeah, so Cipher provided yesterday that they are going to be increasing their hash rate to 13 exahash this year, and they're going to do that by getting the newer generation miners that they have an option or contract in place with Bitmain. They're upping that to the S21s Pros. And they're going to be swapping out a bunch of the old machines that they have at their current facilities. Those are the 100 terahash miners, like the 80 terahash miners as well. So those are going to be going out. That's going to bring their efficiencies down to like 18 point something joules per terahash. It's a huge improvement from where they are right now. And it will be a nice improvement in growth also, but a lot of the growth still isn't going to be until 2025, which now they're targeting to get to 35 exahash in 2025, which is huge.
Yeah, and they are notorious for having the cheapest power out there. I think 2.7 cents or something, isn't it, Sebastian?
Yeah. Yep.
So pretty compelling. If you've got that kind of input cost, you've got fleet efficiency sub 20 and Bitcoin price going up, that's a pretty good situation to be in, hey?
Yeah.
The market's recognized them because their value was over 1.22 billion. So it's only in this last few weeks that we've seen other miners, Core Scientific and IREN have now gone past the market capitalization of Cipher, but they were in that sort of group of 3 or 4 that were over $1 billion.
Yeah.
And it was good. It was good news. I mean, I think they were only planning to initially go to about 9.7, I think, by the end of the year, and a lot of their growth is next year when the facility
like Pearl gets built out,
gets fitted out, and that takes them sort of like 25 exahash or whatever like that. So a lot of growth coming next year. Cheap energy, and if you're talking about like margins in terms of operating margin, they have a good operating margin as well. So I'm sometimes critical of miners who tend to pay themselves well.
I'm critical of that too. You look at there,
and they had some, like, compared to other miners, they had high proportion of G&A costs, but they're bringing the revenues in, they're paying the costs, and they're getting a good margin, getting good cash, free cash flow coming through. So one for me to pay a bit more attention to. I haven't, in full disclosure, I've never bought any Cipher shares since I've been in this space.
Neither have I.
And so but I think I let my patron know the other day that I'm certainly going to do more due diligence, look at them, and if I can read between the lines and see what's happening. It looks like it's still a value play. There are other value plays out there as well, but like the ones I've been calling for the last sort of 6 months have all done really, really well now. So I need to find the next one. Maybe Hive Digital. Sebastian, I don't know what your thoughts on Hive is.
Let's talk Hive, you guys, quick. Yeah, we just got a comment about it, and we've got a slide I'll find for it. That's a great one to talk about, especially M&A potential.
Yeah, Hive's got plenty of facilities. The only thing that is a downer for them is the lack of growth this year, right? They're trying to just get to 6 exahash. I think I heard it. Is it 8 now? Okay, so I haven't seen a purchase for anything to get to 8, so I still am at 6 based on what they've purchased. So 8 would be nice, obviously, but definitely would like to see more and more growth from them, especially since when you look at things where they are compared to like Bitfarms, right? They were like the two from Canada that were kind of close to each other as far as hash rate was concerned, and they were kind of growing the same way. And now we're seeing Bitfarms kind of outpace them a little bit here in the growth sector. And other than that, the operations are great. Their financials are great. They have great SG&A, and all that stuff is in check there. They've been through this plenty of times already in the previous cycles. It's just unfortunate they don't have a huge growth plan. And, to their credit, they've done this for since 2017. They know what they're doing there. And I guess it's enough for them as long as they can pay their employees, pay the salaries of everybody else, and continue to grow and maintain.
If you look at that chart there, Sebastian, you can see on the screen, and you can see the value per current terahash for Hive is hovering around the $18 mark.
Yeah.
Look at CleanSpark at $174. So CleanSpark, the market is valuing CleanSpark's hash rate 10 times more than it's valuing Hive's.
Growth. That's growth.
Yeah, you're dead on.
So factoring the growth for CleanSpark. So the next column tells you what it's going to look like if they achieve 32, and that takes CleanSpark down to 94, and Hive goes down to 11. So then you're looking at a 9x. So we spoke with Dan and Ben and sort of like they're sort of saying like these merger and acquisitions now this floor that people are looking at is 100 million per exahash as a sort of like a valuation.
But how much more are they going to be generating if they reach those targets, right? In revenue, if Bitcoin goes up to 150,000, 200,000.
Yeah, I mean, from a valuation perspective, you're buying 5 exahash.
It's relative, yeah.
It's relative, yeah. So, I mean, I think the whole company's valued at $240 million, and they've got 2,500 Bitcoin in their balance sheet. So, they've probably got more than half their market capitalization is in treasury. And we haven't even talked about the fact that they're achieving $1 million a month in HPC revenues, which we know are significantly high margin, and they're using the GPUs which they have for Ethereum mining. So there are some miners just the market's not giving them the same sort of love, and I do appreciate. If you watch the podcast with Ben and Dan, that we said that the market's giving a premium for hash rate growth, and that's obvious because if you look at where it is at the moment for some of the bigger miners, they're getting this sort of like multiples. But I still think at the valuations there, when Riot go in and make an offer for Bitfarms at over 100 million per exahash, and nobody's considering Hive, but I would imagine people are considering Hive. I think they're right for the take if Bitfarms are going in, and how many other companies in that sort of mid tier bracket could be snapped up, because JP Morgan brought out an article yesterday about the consolidation in the mining space. So they think there's only going to be about 5 or 6 players in the next year or so, because there'll be lots of consolidation, and Riot are sort of like showing what can be done.
If they can pull it off with Bitfarms, that'll be interesting to see. Right, it's interesting how it's going to play out. But yeah, Hive right now has 65% of their market cap in their HODL position. That's huge.
That's incredible. Hey, yeah, I think you're right though, Sebastian. The market's valuing growth, but it's big growth. They want to see double-digit, big exahash, big megawatts. And we're really starting to see, that's why I put in this second little clip there, the talk about data centers, the value of infrastructure, the value of megawatts that we just didn't get a couple quarters ago. So that's really a benefit to really the entire sector. But Hive, obviously, a big benefactor of that as well.
Sebastian, from a growth perspective, out of those 5 big miners, who do you think's not going to make the target, or maybe more than one not going to make the target?
Oh, by the end of the year?
Yeah, who are the least likely? Who are the least likely in order to not make the target?
I mean, if you go historically, you would say probably that Marathon, right? They've had problems in the past, but maybe they've learned from those. Geez, I don't know. It's going to be close. Right now, my concern is with CleanSpark, with not having the infrastructure there. Riot has infrastructure, IREN has infrastructure, Bitfarms has infrastructure. They're building it out. And then Marathon also has infrastructure there that they're upgrading and building out as well. So out of those 4, I'm probably more concerned with CleanSpark right now, based on the lack of information as far as where are they going to put all the machines in. That's kind of the one that I'm kind of cautious on right now.
Yeah, no, it's valid point.
And as we've said, that's really the bottleneck right now, you guys. So Hank, you're right in there, exact same thought process. Now we're getting a couple of questions about some of the smaller miners now, which is kind of a nice segue as we start to talk about M&A, some DMG questions, some Soluna questions. Do you follow those two, Sebastian?
I follow DMG. I track their monthly production updates, and then I do a video on all the smaller guys that I track: DMG, DigiHost, Argo, Mawson, and Stronghold. Like once a month, I'll do a video on those guys.
I thought you dropped 7 miners. Are you still doing them? Are you?
I'm still keeping an eye on them, right? Because we might have one of those miners that might become the next CleanSpark, right? So I'm still keeping an eye on them.
You're throwing my words back at me here, aren't you?
Yeah.
You do.
Hey,
we watched that video. We watched the video when you said, "I'm dropping these miners." We baited Rescue was going. Yeah, I thought you might have to CleanSpark and Cipher in it, like just as a wind-up, like. But it was a small. We
just said, "Hey, we're going to add these 7 miners." We got DMG production. We emailed Sheldon this morning. So if you want to talk DMG, guys, we can click here. So they came out with 23 Bitcoin, just shy of 1 exahash. Pretty good hodl though for the size of the company. And we've talked to Sheldon, Steve, about the upgrades, about the immersion in their Christina Lake, BC facility. What are your thoughts on DMG long play, guys? Do you think this is an M&A target?
It could be. What are they tracking to get to, like 2 exahash right now, I think?
1.7 exahash by the time they get these T21s installed. That they're installing.
I think their goal overall is to get to like 2 exahash.
2 exahash by the end of the year. But I mean, in honesty, their target last year I think was 2 exahash, and if you look at some of the smaller miners, they haven't really. I'll do a chart this next week, or not. Maybe not next week because we're away next week. But when I come back of what the miners had at say January 2023 and where they are now, just to show who has grown and who's sort of like been left behind, and it's quite distinctive. IREN booked the trend, but a lot of the other miners in that space there, miners like Argo Blockchain haven't increased any hash rate since they went into the Helios. So that's a couple of years. SATO technology haven't increased their hash rate. They're at sort of like 0.5. And we've had the CO on, and it's like the challenge is that they all want to grow. They all really want to grow. Even Rob Chang at Griffin Mining, again, very, very similar hash rate to DMG. DMG haven't got any debt, so it's in terms of financials, they've got a good treasury position there. I mean, that's a good stack for a small miner. Having that amount of Bitcoin is a good stack. So they've got the ability there. Sheldon's got his fingers in quite a few pies. He doesn't just do self mining. He's also involved with the Bitdeer site when that was built down in next to Riot's facility at Rockdale. So his background is tech, but he's also he's instigating like building infrastructure, creating infrastructure for mining machines, software, mining pools. So he created the Mara pool. So that's
all their Core Plus division, you guys. Basically, what we're discussing.
They do a lot of things, but the trouble is, it's like a lot of things, small pies, and should the focus would have been on hash rate growth at all costs to try and join those bigger boys. That's where the challenge is. But if they can try and get there this year, get to 2 exahash, I mean, they could be right for a takeover because there's no debt, and so they're if you look at what their valuation is at the moment, I think last time I looked, it was around about 70 million. So if they get to 1.7 and it's at 70 million, that means you're looking at 40 million dollars per exahash in cost value. And we just articulated that some of the other big companies are 3, 4, 5 times that amount. So even if you turn around and say we'll give you a really 60-70% premium, you're still going to get that company quite cheap. And they haven't got many facilities, so it's not like they're spread. You're buying a miner with 2 facilities, so it's an opportunity there. But for me, it's about that growth needs to imply, because they've been saying about the growth for quite a while now. And this month here, just noticed, if you read through the second paragraph, there was a delay. They're expecting to have these machines in by the end of June, and I've been writing in my articles by the end of June. Now it's going to be July, and there's maybe something else that could happen there. So we want to see it happen quickly. The fleet efficiency is good because that'll come down, like I say, it's coming down to 23. Anything below 24 is in my is good at the moment. Although now miners are starting to, by the end of this year, there'll be many miners will be under 20.
Yeah.
So 20 seems to be like the threshold, but 24 up until a month or so ago was like the lowest we had of all the miners. I think CleanSpark might be under 24 now, and Core Scientific around about 24. Marathon around about 24. Riot should be getting close to 24 with the amount of new machines they're installing at Corsicana and Rockdale. So 24 is an old target. 2020 is like the new efficiency target, and then at the end of the year, 5 or 6 miners will be sort of 18, 17 joules a terahash. And if you think about the average for the industry, 30 to 35, that's twice as efficient. Means paying half the amount. It's taking you half the energy to mine a Bitcoin.
Essentially taking the halving out of the equation this year for you. And guys, Core Scientific now 14.4%, $8.18. IREN up 14% to 1033, and Wolf up 15% now to 320. Sebastian, well, I guess we could all do this. Who do you guys think is going to be the top mover today? And you guys answer in the comment section there too. Maybe we'll do some prizing. Sebastian,
Stronghold.
Stronghold.
Yeah,
Stronghold mining. If actually the 2 warrants that course
warrants don't count.
the 2 warrants are the best, are the highest percentages. But Stronghold mining. The only thing is with Stronghold mining, I mean, I do like that. I like what they've got the setup and all that, but it's you get one great news story followed by 3 or 4 mediocre bad news stories, and it's like they haven't got consistency. But I wrote about Stronghold. That was one of my first articles for Compass Mining, because what they do is they take waste coal and convert it into energy, and then they make the site where that coal was into greenfield site. So they create, for the environment space, it's like a
great story there.
And they get benefits from the state in terms of reliefs on some of the prices they're paying. So energy becomes cheaper for them. They were really burnt in 2021. At the end of 2021, they made this really sort of like, I suppose in hindsight, a bad deal by purchasing a load of miners at $80 a terahash, because they would get them quickly. And we're seeing miners today buy the S21 Pros for about $16, and these machines are twice as efficient as the ones that Stronghold were buying in that year. So some of these miners were burnt buying these sizable orders at really ridiculous prices using debt. So it's just been like but I obviously the share price there, and actually I think it's Stronghold. The CEO said we're up for sale.
Yeah, well, the board came out. I think they, in general, the company said that they're up for sale. They're looking at all.
I think it was ago. He said, and by the way, guys, I think they give an update like that. I think
that was the first one.
By the way, we're up for sale. It was interesting because obviously that there's going to be some miners who are going to struggle post halving now.
Well, they were burning through cash even before the halving event. I mean, if you looked at their balance sheet and all that stuff, they were just spending way too much money on other things. But guys, I got to go. Thank you so much for having me. have a great rest of the day. I'll probably catch you guys in X Spaces or something like that. But thank you again.
Thanks again, Sebastian. Good to see you, buddy. We'll talk soon.
All right, bye, guys.
Sebastian.
Take care. You guys give Sebastian a nice like before you head out here if you're tuning out, and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new here. We'd love to have you as part of the community. Anthony and I are going to keep going for a couple more minutes. We've got about 4 more miners to talk about. HUD 8, Anthony, this one has been really quiet, actually. This is a company, my first miner I purchased in the space. My first interview ever was with Sue Ennis in this space. Asher's been on. He said, hey, give me some time to make things work in Q1 and Q2. And pretty much we haven't heard a lot else from Asher. They do have some obviously updates coming out, monthly performance updates, things like that. But in terms of strategy here, you said we haven't seen a big machine order out of them in quite some time. The US BTC merger took quite some time, and it seems like they're now just focusing internally. But if you look at the fundamentals here, Anthony, they've got over a gigawatt under management, 1,100 megawatts under management, and that seems to be becoming what's really the bottleneck or the prize to have right now. What's your thoughts on HUD 8?
Well, it's fallen from grace. I mean, go back to 2021, and most people, if people were buying mining shares in 2021, I guarantee most of them would have put in their portfolio. They were like, really popular share to have. They were the first company that set out, we are not selling Bitcoin, we are hodling, and they did that all the way through that bear cycle. Where other miners were trying to, but were forced into selling. They didn't sell during the bear cycle. They have sold some in the last sort of 6-8 months, but it's not selling all their production. They've been effectively just selling like their monthly production to meet their operational costs. But they've got a stack of over last month it was 9,100 Bitcoin. So that Riot are very close to that number now. So Riot might have the second biggest hodl this month. Wait to see HUT's numbers come out. There's only HUT and Hive to release their numbers now. So when you look at the hodl position there, if you've got 9,000 Bitcoin at today's price, 71,000, you're looking at sort of $650 million in just your hodl. Yes, they have. So the new HUT 8 Corp, does have debt on the balance sheet. So it's about $200 million of debt on the balance sheet. And most of that is actually short-term debt. So a lot of that debt needs to be sorted out in the next 12 months effectively. So if it's in the current liabilities, it means it has to be, that's calculated as being, calculated as being worked on during this 12 months. Anything long-term is more than 12 months. So they've got some debt on the balance sheet there. What they're doing is they're looking at obviously cash management and bringing in lots of new rules and regulations associated with how they spend money. So they're not like flying business class anymore like that. They're not staying in fancy hotels. There is like limits to what teams can spend when they're traveling to conferences or to sites, because they do now, because it's one company now, they have a large number of sites that, obviously the staff have to get to, from site to site. Some of the management team will be traveling to these sites. So they're looking at ways to save money. When we had Asher on the podcast, he was like, judge me in Q3. And so, we're getting towards the end of Q2 by the end of June. So, we should start hopefully seeing, some of the strategies in play, delivering some of what he said. But they've got, when we look at their market capitalization, take away the hodl and allow for the debt, that means you're getting effectively a business with 1,100 megawatts for, literally $300 or $400 million. And we've talked about, how much Core Scientific was offered by CoreWeave for having, a fraction of that in terms of what power supply they're providing. So from an infrastructure, from a power position, they are a player in the market. Their self-mining business has sort of like dropped in recent months. I think they're operating at about 4.5 exahash at the moment. So nowhere near where they were when they merged. I think it was closer to 7.2 when they merged. No new machines for a long time. And they're probably just waiting. Asher said we'll wait for when we think the price is right to start buying machines and replacing. So they have facilities. That's not the bottleneck for them. They do have a big hodl. That's not the bottleneck for them, so they can utilize Bitcoin. It's just seeing these plans coming to fruition. So we just need to see what the plans are, and then we can judge Asher in Q3 on how he's performed.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, makes sense. This is one I continue to hold, you guys. I definitely agree they had a rough 2023, but I do feel like they've got a lot of value in this company, specifically in their infrastructure. Now, Anthony, I wanted to touch on a few that we haven't got a chance to.
Just a quick thing. I'll answer some of the question here. Anthony works for Compass. Anthony doesn't work for Compass. Anthony writes articles which Compass publish, so it's quite different. I wish I was working. I'd get a salary a month for them, but no. I have a contract where I write articles for them, and they get published each month. So no, I'm not an employee. I actually, I have a job already, so I'm not looking to get another one. But no, just put that on the record there. My name is sometimes associated because when I put my articles on social media, they are published by Compass. So I include that in when I write the articles there. So they're doing me a great service in publishing articles. Bear in mind, I'm just an accountant. I'm not a journalist or anything like that. But I've been doing these articles for a couple of years now. I think over 70, nearly 80 articles produced. So just something else I've been enjoying doing, and I'm doing the main monthly one at the moment, in between this podcast and the weekend. Hopefully get that finished and get out early next week.
Yeah, it's a good call out. And the Compass angle is really nice for the power mining analysis platform because it allows us to reach out to new people. We've also launched the audio podcast. So if you guys are out in the car or working out or whatever, and you want to listen along, I know some of these podcasts get a little bit long if you're glued to a computer. And we've got the newsletter. So if you go to the Power Mining Analysis website, you can log in there and we'll basically send you all of the top headlines that are going on that week, plus any media that we've put out in relation to those headlines.
We've had great traction on the podcast, haven't we? Through like the Apple, through Amazon, through Spotify.
Surprisingly, yeah.
I came back from a concert. Bryce did the Jason Les podcast on his own. I let him go on do one on his own. To sort of like see him, and he did a really good job. And I listened to that podcast literally 5 or 10 minutes after the podcast finished. I'm driving back to my hometown of Southampton, 40 minutes in the car, which is about the length of the podcast. And it was I just listened to it all the way back. Me and my wife listened to it, and it was really good to have it in the car and getting Jason's take on all the sort of like the key points that I was expecting that would be asked in that podcast. So. Yeah, I listened to quite a few on those mediums there, and we're quite surprised. We only started this about a month ago, but the numbers have been really ticking up quite nicely. We get quite a good daily number. We're not going to get any benefit, but this is something that you guys can do, because I know during the day some of you guys are working and not have the time maybe to see the live show or see some of the interview podcasts, but by having the ability to download a podcast and listen to it at your own leisure, while you're doing something else, while you're at the gym, while you're going for a walk, whatever like that, it's just that it's great ability to do that. So thanks for your support. Yeah, no, for sure. And I caught that, Anthony. You let me talk to Jason on my own. Anthony forgets I did this for 2 years without Anthony, but no, I'm just joking. Obviously, the expert analysis, you far outshine me and Anthony. Now, Saluna is one that we haven't chatted about yet, but they came out with some pretty good big developments actually in relation to Dorothy 2, some financing. Saluna is one that it's caught my attention really since day one, Anthony, because they're so intertwined with renewable energy. Rather than go out and find these Corsicana gigawatt sites, they're going to stranded renewable energy where they can get behind the meter and they can get rates that are just not available to anyone else. The nice thing about this is it really takes the infrastructure and location bottleneck out of the equation for Soluna. So they've come out with Dorothy project. That's basically their model or template. Now Dorothy 2 is the next iteration of that. And they just go out and find investors on an individual project joint venture funding and say, hey, look, we just did Dorothy 1 here.
we've got a plan to do it again here, and you can see the optics and the numbers for yourself. In addition to that, they came up with their operating update for the month. Bitcoin mined was down over April. They came in at 18 with 770 petahash. So not necessarily the biggest miner out there, but a very innovative approach to mining. Hey, Anthony?
Absolutely. I opened a position in Soluna a couple of months ago, so I've got them in my sort of like my pension. But I do like I like what they do. That the small miner, they're doing these piecemeal projects. So they find the project, and then they start looking at getting a partner to bring in the capital to help them take the project forward, and it's effectively like a profit share going forward there. So for a small mining company, they're able to create these projects, and we're not talking Project Dorothy 2 and Project Catty. We're talking some of these projects are over 100 megawatts now, so we're going to see some really significant revenues coming through. And if you do your analysis and look at Saluna for a market cap, so in terms of, and the slide there on the screen tells you what they've got at the moment. So they have about just under 1 exahash of self mining. In April, they're operating at 800. In May, just under 800. Then you look at what the hosting position is there. It's double the self mining. So they host about 1.5, 1.6 exahash in terms of hosting. They're also setting up now the HPC side of it. So that's going to be 3 megawatts associated, or 2 megawatts associated with HPC. And bear in mind, Bit Digital using 3 to 4 megawatts for their 50 million contract. So if you think about what potential revenues could come in for that for Soluna and what they're paying in power. So Soluna are probably one of the other miners that can compete with Cipher mining in terms of low power. Their power is under 3 cents a kilowatt hour. And it's, as Bryce said, it's because they can go to these locations, get behind the meter, attract where energy can't be utilized fully, and pay for the energy. So it's a win-win. Soluna get a great deal. The energy company gets some revenues in that they were never going to get, and it works really well for both sides. I like the facilities that they produce. They looks like they produce really good infrastructure. And if you looked at some of the presentations, I thought it was actually artificial intelligence for a while, and then someone said, no, that's our real facilities. We've got a drone to go and film it like that. I thought it was something out of like Star Wars or something like. And but they look really, really smart sites that are built for this. I like what I do like is if you go to the presentation and look at what they're building for their HPC. The renders are already in the presentation now, and that looks very much futuristic there. So, but then we've had John on the podcast 2 or 3 times now. He can tell the tale of what Soluna have been doing. He's been in CEO for just over a year. He's doubled the revenue since he's been there, and the forecast for 2024 is significantly higher. It's only going up now. And these 2 announcements for Project Dorothy 2 and Project Catty will seriously. Project Dorothy 2, I think, is 30 to 35 million contract. This company is only valued at something like 10 to 15 million dollars, and just one of their projects. So not the hosting, not the self mining, but this is a project that's about to be started. It's a $35 million project. So. And then Project Catty was 160 megawatts of power involved. So we're talking, this is a way some of these smaller companies can grow. They're growing organically. They're finding the projects, finding the partners, delivering them together, looking for the next project. So real organic growth there. Because, like we've already articulated in this podcast, it's a challenge for small miners to grow, but they're doing it in a way that alleviates it. And if you look at the likes of Core Scientific, Core Weave are giving Core Scientific $300 million up front to help build the facilities that they require. So Core Scientific didn't have that capital amount for obvious reasons. Just come out of Chapter 11. They're trying to pay off the debt there. They obviously wouldn't be able to go and get loans straight away to cover that amount of money. So when you have these big partnerships, tends to be that, you know, one partner will have significant amount of capital, and we know that CoreWeave just raised literally billions and billions of dollars through, you know, through private financing, through private shares in the company, because they're not even a listed company yet. So they've gone out there and got raised capital that way, and they're going to give.
Anthony, CoreWeave market cap, you said, it's north of 20 billion.
It's I think last time I looked was 19 billion. But if you think about
as a private company,
if you think about the most valuable company in the world, Nvidia now has overtaken Apple. So Nvidia is the most valuable company in the world from a stock perspective. It's over 3 trillion. And what does that mean for the rest of the HPC AI space? Is that impact having some impact now on the likes of Core Scientific, who are you know, not just a self miner with 20 exahash, not just a hosted miner with 5 or 6 exahash, but also about to move into a significant contract deal in an area which is on fire, you know, literally on fire. And we might see some of these mining companies start rotating from Bitcoin mining into HPC, because it could actually be more attractive. I mean, you know, if anyone's listened to the Santabar podcast, we've had him on 2 or 3 times in not such a wide space of time. You know, when Sebastian articulated it, you know, he wasn't sure about them with their growth. Well, they might not be growing their Bitcoin mining service as quickly as everyone wants them to do, but they're growing the HPC side significantly. That was at 30 million initially. Now it's at 50 million. It's going to 100 million. You know, this is a company, again, that's valued about just over $300 million, and they've got 170 million in the treasury, zero debt. Of any company, they've got the least amount of debt of all the public miners. It's zero, no debt.
We can talk about them again, Anthony, because I know we kind of rushed through. And yeah, NVIDIA, you guys, as of today, up 812% in the last 12 months. So I said this in the podcast. I was in NVIDIA. I only had 4 shares, Anthony, at $155. I sold out at $450. But that is an
full disclosure. I think it's like 0.6 or 0.7 of a share in NVIDIA, which was part of I've got a basket of shares that I purchased through one of the ARK funds.
Okay.
And so, you know, it's up 500-600% or something ridiculous. It's probably my best performing stock at the moment.
There you go. Yeah, it's the Tesla of the year. Let's say.
Just thinking, we bought $1,000 of Core Scientific last year and $1,000 of Nvidia in January last year. Both of those stocks. We won't be chatting on this. We won't be chatting on this podcast now.
Well, don't worry, you guys. We're going to do that with the Bitcoin miners here. Again, smash that like button if you're having a green day. Anthony, the longer we talk here, the more these miners just keep running. This is an incredible, incredible day. Another one, you guys, and we're covering some of these smaller miners. We understand, you guys, that there's a lot of interest in the big miners. But as we just talked about with NVIDIA and with CleanSpark and with IREN, it does not take long for these companies to turn from a small player to a medium to a large player. This industry is only a couple years old, you guys. CleanSpark was virtually nothing a few years ago. IREN was really, until like a few weeks, a month ago, was really considered a mid-tier miner, and things can change so fast. So definitely keep an eye on some of these smaller miners. SATO Technologies got the name from Satoshi. I asked about that in one of our podcasts with Romain. They came out with their production results as well. So they're sitting just north of about half an exahash here. In terms of SATO, do you think this would be an M&A candidate, or do you think they're going to continue independent here? What do you see as kind of the strategy, Anthony, for SATO Technologies?
Yeah, so the challenge will be is that they're a consistent miner, you know, in terms of the one facility they've got, 20 megawatt facility every month. Last year, in terms of production per month, they were a top 4 miner of the 14, 15 miners that I cover. But bear in mind, it's on one site, so it's manageable in an easy way there. It's been 0.5 exahash for the last 18 months, so it hasn't really grown. It does have a bit of debt on the balance sheet. I think there's about $10 million of debt on the balance sheet, which they use to purchase machines and And so, there has some debt there, but it's got a low market capitalization, low enterprise value. And this is another one that if you did the valuation by exahash and compared it to the miners, it's ridiculously cheap. Growth-wise, the challenge will be how. So can they, sell shares? Well, they're not a big company to start with. So if they're valued around about, $20-30 million, how much could they raise if they sold like 10% of the shares? That's 2 million. What does 2 million get you? If you sold 20%, it's 4 million. What does 4 million get you? What's the premium that they'd have to give to sell 4 million? So because they're not NASDAQ listed, they'd have to do their dilution in a different way. All these big mining companies can use what they call an at-the-market offering. And so they tell the market that they've got approval to sell up to, say, $500 million a share. A couple of years ago, that figure was like 50 or 100 million. Them figures are long gone now. You're seeing companies now 500, 750, 1.5 billion. I think Marathon's ATM is. SATO, unfortunately, because they're small, they're not on the NASDAQ at the moment. They're on the Canadian TSX exchange. But they do everything well as a small miner. It's about growth. So merging with another miner to become a bigger miner might be the way forward for SATO. And we've discussed with Romain, the CEO, and he probably thinks along the same lines as well. So there are some smaller miners out there. Maybe they can collaborate together, reduce costs, because once you start merging some of the smaller miners, you don't need duplication of some of the management expenses, so you can make some savings there. And then as they get bigger, more potential to grow. So 18 months ago, when CleanSpark was probably $300 or $400 million company, it just took them to they were given an opportunity and they utilized it and they've grown, and they're like today. They're $3.5-4 billion company, and that's been very, very quick turnaround. 600 million was October. We're now in June, so 8-9 months they've gone up 6-7-fold.
Yeah.
The challenge for these small ones is because of the capital constraints to raise money, they can't go to the debt markets because they've got debt already. They can't sell shares significant enough to grow. It's how they do it, and so effectively they're able to, make a profit each month, even after post the halving. We know what the energy cost is. We know what the revenues are. We know what their G&A expenses are. So every month they're producing Bitcoin within the price of the Bitcoin. But all these people in the comments here want to know companies that are growing to, 15, 20, 30, 40 exahash. And unfortunately, some of the smaller ones just won't get there without making some decision. Now you've got Griffin on here. When we had Rob on the program, there's a company with 904 petahash, so 0.9 exahash, and he's got a growth target of 10 by the end of the year. So if you're looking at miners who've got the biggest growth target in terms of percentage growth, Griffin's got the biggest growth target of all the miners. Now he did say tongue in cheek that 10 would be like amazing, but he's expecting to get half of that, maybe 5 or 6 exahash would be fantastic. And the way that would happen is by organically maybe merging with other companies, looking for opportunities out there. Maybe some non-public miners want to merge, and there's an opportunity. Griffin Mining's only 3 members of staff. We've got more members of staff in Power Mining Analysis than Griffin Mining. So,
we've joked about that a few times, but what's interesting about those 3 staff is they all come from big mining companies, right? So when you talk about small miners with big ambitions, these guys have already been the big ambition, and now they're just trying to recreate that. Very similar to what we see a lot in the oil industry. Guys will leave and start their own startup oil companies and then sell and then just repeat the process. So Griffin is one to watch. I'm just laughing about the comments here. I'm not turning 21. I thought I was turning 34, but I'm actually 35 here, and my birthday's on Canada Day. So I'll make sure Anthony gets me.
I'll be 21 soon.
Yeah, times 3 or what? Okay.
So you have put a note there. From I think it's from July that Griffin get now included into the Russell Microcap Index.
Actually, let's talk about indexes.
Yeah, so it's a good move for companies when they get put into these new indexes. It means that the shares have to be purchased then, because they become the index funds buy shares in the Russell Microcap Index. They buy shares in every company. They can't turn around and say, well, I like those 5 shares and I don't like the other 95, so I'll just buy the 5 that I like. You've got to buy a cross section. So, that's probably one of the main ways that institutions end up having these mining companies on their balance sheets, because the challenge out there at the moment is, from an institutional point of view, is, are the mining companies actually considered to be, a great investment from an institutional perspective? And I'm sure that some of them look at some of the areas that are a concern in terms of salaries maybe and stock compensation. Think actually they're paying themselves out of the institutions getting on board here. And bear in mind, it's a very junior market. Hive Digital, the oldest miner, 7 years. Some of these miners we talked about today, 2 or 3 years old. But if you look at some of the salaries, you think they were like, Amazon and Google and Apple, and they're not quite there yet. They've still got, but it's a bit of a concern, because what we want the institutions to get involved, because that's where the big money is. And if they see a market that is investable, then they'll go in there and they'll buy that. And I'm sure if you look at the likes of Nvidia and how and these big mega companies like Apple and Microsoft, Meta, and you see the big institution backing behind those companies there. It's they're well run companies, and they've got track record. And we've only got 2 or 3 years with these companies here, so it's still in its infancy. It still needs to sort of develop, and the market needs to be educated as well about Bitcoin mining, because I think that's probably part of the issue. Yeah.
Now, Anthony, we're basically through the miner portion here, you guys, but a couple of interesting discussions, and we're watching the comments here talking about Roaring Kitty and GameStop, GME, AMC, all those meme stocks. Anthony, I wanted to talk for a second about the FOMO factor, fear of missing out here. So what's happened, you guys? The ETFs have come through. That's put consistent institutional buying pressure on these mining stocks. But interestingly enough, the Bitcoin sector as a whole, this is a very niche sector. There are a lot of big time Bitcoin advocates that are invested in these companies. It is, in a sense, kind of a meme stock-esque type of thing in terms of the retail following and the involvement of the CEOs on Twitter and X and the community. Anthony, do you think we're starting to see retail FOMO yet? Or do you think this is purely in terms of the Bitcoin price and the move we're seeing in share price of miners, still driven by the ETFs and some of that consistent regular buying? And the reason I ask is I saw a post on X yesterday saying that Google search volume for Bitcoin price is still very, very low. I know the relative strength index, RSI, a lot of these miners are nowhere close to overbought. So do you think this FOMO is going to start to kick in, or do you think it's already here, or what's your take there?
I don't think it's kicked in yet. I mean, we know at the moment, in terms of if you look at miners' track record this year, we still have the likes of Riot are still 33% down year to date, Bit Digital 32% down, Bitdeer 25% down, Marathon 10% down. So some of these stocks are down year to date. Some of them are nicely up now. So IREN's nicely up. So interestingly, Bitfarms, even though it's had an offer in from Riot, is still, even at today's price now, which is $2.50, is still 14% down its year-to-date position.
Anthony, just while you're saying that, I just want to direct you guys where we're looking at here. So this was taken this morning. So some of the price action's a little bit old on this, but if you look at the second column from the right, so I guess the third one there, 52-week range, that's what we're talking about here, you guys. So you can see, although the daily range and the last couple days of trading have been really bullish for this sector, if you look across the board, really starting at Bitdeer, SATO, Hive, Griffin, Marathon, Soluna, they're almost trading right at the low end of the 52-week range. Hey, Anthony?
Yeah. And just look at that, just what you just mentioned there. If you look at Saluna, you've got a market capitalization there of under $10 million. And we've just said they've got, they're mining at a similar level, not much shorter than what DMG are doing. And DMG's, albeit Canadian, that's still about 70 million US. And Soluna have got a hosted service. They've also now going to be picking up with a HPC service as well. And they've just got these two big projects. One of them's about to start because they got the capital agreed, and the other ones, they found the power and the facility. Now they're looking for the partner. So, it's worth doing some research and looking at some of these mining companies and seeing. But if you look at go to the volume, and we talked about that on the podcast as well. So the volume there, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th column from the left. And you look at the volume for Soluna, only 84,000 shares today. But if you look at average volume for 3 months, so that's an average day rate, 351,000 shares. Look at Bitfarms, 20 million. You look at Marathon, 50 million. CleanSpark, 32 million. Cipher, 7.5 million. SATO Technology, only 15,000 shares is an average. IREN's up to 10 million. So if you go back about 7 or 8 months ago, IREN's average was about 1 million. So what we've seen there is we've seen sort of like a real adoption from IREN the last sort of 6 to 9 months. People now are starting to see what I've been sort of like showing for the last couple of years as a performing miner, as one that's managed with a great team. Yes, they had the issue with NIDIG, and that's not been resolved, and Dan articulated that there. I think the worst case scenario is it could be a $13 million payment. But when you think they've got $320 million, for them it'd be a small amount, and that's gone away then. And bear in mind, when they handed those machines back, which were worth about 65 million, the debt on the balance sheet was over 100 million. So they benefited probably towards 40 million by making that decision not to default on the loan. So it's going to cost them 13 million. It sounds like it was probably the right decision to do. And that's based on if it happens that way, they're going through appeal. So they'll get a verdict in the next week or so. And IREN will come out and acknowledge it. I mean, if anyone watched that podcast with Dan the other day, I mean, I think of all the CEOs we've had on, that's the most laid back of any of the CEOs. Nothing
he's calm, cool, and collect. He says 30 exahash is a no big deal. He's worried about 4 years from now. Hey, two comments on volume, Anthony, because a lot of times you guys in trading, we talk about share price. Volume is just as important. And two things we talked about a little bit earlier in the podcast, if you weren't here. So Riot has now said they're up to 12% ownership in Bitfarms. If you look at the volume on Bitfarms being 20.3 million a day on average, this is where Anthony was talking about. It's very easy for Riot or for any other company for that matter, Marathon, CleanSpark, to come in and start nibbling at these companies, because if you're moving 20 million shares a day, you're not going to be able to see these million share glit or bumps here and there from purchasing companies, right? So number one, it's nice to kind of hide or mask some of your intentions. Then we also talked about ATM strategy in regards to CleanSpark and IREN. And if you're moving a lot of shares back and forth each day, it really makes the ATM a lot more subtle as well. And you're not seeing those big price fluctuations as you sell into that volume. So a couple comments there. And Anthony, it really is interesting because Bitcoin, since we started the podcast, has pulled back about $700. It was at 71,700, right around 71 now. But most of the miners are now kind of at their all-time high for the day, at least. So again, we're starting to see that leveraged upside that we've been talking about in terms of the miners compared to Bitcoin that maybe people were a little bit concerned with for a couple couple days
Yeah,
there.
Core Scientific up 16% at the moment.
Sure. Yeah,
that's their main share, not the warrants, the main share.
So Core Scientific, you guys moving in a big way. We had made this slide last week at $5. So if you watched our live podcast last week, Wednesday, you could have picked up Core Scientific for $5. Now it's trading north of 8. Same thing with IREN, you guys. We were talking last week about IREN crossing the $7 barrier. Now they're over $10. So again, congrats to everyone who's taken the step or taken the leap. You've got invested in these companies. And we think this is really just the beginning of kind of this bullish thesis coming to light. So, Anthony,
we're Joey as well.
What's that?
Congrats to Joey.
Yeah, no kidding. That guy's going to be retired here after the Core Scientific moves. That basically brings us to the end of the presentation, you guys. We were planning to go about 2 hours. We had Sebastian in here for about 45 minutes. We can open up a Q&A if you want, Anthony, if you've got some time, or if you need to run, we can shut her down here.
Yeah, we can do 15 minutes Q&A if you want. Yeah.
Sure, guys. So feel free to jump. We'll just ask these as they come in. Feel free to ask kind of whatever question you're looking for here, and we'll fill in the blanks to the best of our ability. We appreciate everyone stopping by today. Make sure that you get some eyes on that IREN interview if you didn't get a chance, and the Ben interview from this week, because there's definitely some nuggets in there. So a couple questions here we're getting right now, Anthony. What's the update on Riot and the Bitfarms buying? Do you think they're going to be continuing to buy? Like, for example, today, are we going to see an extra % or 2 every day, or what?
I think their strategy now is they'll try and get a sizable position, which will give them more votes on the board, and so they can get some seats on the board. They may be able to, influence going forward. I mean, we know that Riot have got the resources to meet all of Bitfarms' creditors at the moment in terms of what they've still got to pay out for this year, because you've still got to make that 156 million payment for the machines that they've done. Or they made certain amount of payments, but as you buy these mining machines, you tend to pay when you make an order, then you pay a sort of like a 5 or 6 monthly payments, and then you make the final payment. Generally, the final payment is a month before delivery. So Bitmain or MicroBT, whoever you're buying the machines from, have already been paid up before they actually start issuing any. Now, this last 12 months, that's changed a little bit in the fact that Bitmain allowed mining companies to delay a final payment by a year. So you could pay 8% in advance, and then 20% you could pay a year after delivery, which was like unprecedented. Never heard of that, because these companies wanted the money, before they literally shipped a machine. So all the risk then was with the mining company, get the money in place. So it's interesting, right? I've got the resources to cover all those requirements there. They don't have to do anything. They get a company that's 21 exahash, but the final say in all these merger acquisitions is the shareholders. It's not Bitfarms. So Bitfarms, Riot are the largest shareholder in Bitfarms now in terms of one shareholder. They are the largest. They've got 12%. They were the largest at 9.25% when they made notice to the market that they got a significant size. And when you get to a significant size, you have to tell the market what your intentions are. You can't just like keep buying percentages of a company and just say, no, I'm just buying them because it's like, I like the company and I'm not interested in running it. I just want to buy shares. No, once you get over 9-10% shares, you have to tell the market what your interests are, because effectively the stock price is going up, and you might not be a true investor. You might just be doing it from a short-term perspective. I'll just invest some money in there and I'll pull it all out, and then after that the share price will drop, but I've got my profit out. Don't worry. So there are very much rules out there that prevent that sort of thing happening. So once Riot got to 9.25, they announced to the market what they were doing. They then went out and bought another 0.75% of the company. Did another, I think it was another 3 million shares. And then this week now they've gone out and bought 2 tranches of shares, which takes them to 12%. So that it's giving them, an opportunity maybe to at least get 1 or 2 board members on, and then those 1 or 2 board members.
Riot more attractive to me. I hold both companies, and I like the fact that I get exposure to Bitfarms through Riot. So that's an awesome move, I think.
Yeah, I've not sold. I've got both companies. I've not sold any Bitfarms yet, and I'm not expecting to, because I think if anything does happen, I think the bid has to be higher. Maybe Riot should be thinking about, well, if they get Ben Gagnon, they should be putting another 100 million in the pot just to sweeten it for Ben, because whoever he goes to after this, that gives that company an edge to competitors.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, another metric we didn't talk about yet, Anthony. Hash price is back over $60 now. It's at 63.32 right now. Do you want to give a quick update on the difficulty adjustment and hash price? I believe we're starting to see transaction fees creep up. I was seeing anywhere like around 0.6 per block, 0.6 Bitcoin per block, which is a great thing to see. $63 hash price may sound low compared to where we were pre-halving, but assuming the $50 rate is kind of the target here, that represents basically a 20-25% improvement, which is material for these companies when you're making 10 million, 20 million bucks a month. What's your take on hash price difficulty right now?
So if you think where the hash price difficulty is, and bear in mind in two out of the three difficulties since the halving, we've seen the hash difficulty increase. So it's because not as many miners have been switching off. So with the Bitcoin price at 70,000, either some miners are gambling on the fact that even though they might not be making a profit mining, they're mining Bitcoin to hope that it goes to a significantly higher number, and therefore they can recoup some of their losses in energy now, or 71,000 just gives that little bit more margin for a lot more miners to make a little bit of money. And so, if you go back to January, JP Morgan was saying there's going to be 25-30% of hash rate coming off once the halving occurs, because from a theory perspective, it sounds perfectly. But in January, the Bitcoin price was 42,000. So at 42,000, we've just seen, if you throw SATO Technologies updates up, I think that their energy price to mine one Bitcoin was, is it 48,000 it said on there. So that's the energy cost. Then they've got to pay operating costs. They've got to pay themselves, staff. They've got to pay some G&A costs. And yes, the price is 71. So there might be a smallish margin there. The likes of TeraWulf, you've got TeraWulf's update there. That said 31,000 for a Bitcoin miner in terms of energy in the month of May. So they've got 40,000 margin for what that. So a lot more miners are probably making a margin better than they were planning to, say, 2 or 3 months ago. The Bitcoin price has helped a lot of miners, but it's helped everybody. And so if the price keeps going up, it means the difficulty will still get harder. It means that everyone ends up mining less Bitcoin. So you're aligned on the price keep exponentially increasing to cover you the offset of the Bitcoin that you weren't able to, the full production that you're not able to mine because the difficulty is changing. So it's like a catch-22 for some of these miners. Yes, they're not mining as much Bitcoin, but they're getting rewarded in terms of the transaction fees and the Bitcoin price.
Yeah. Hey, we are getting a flurry of questions, so we'll do a power hour here for us. We can rip through these exit strategies. So this is an interesting one, you guys, that we did a video about. It's called When Are We Selling? And talking about our exit strategy. I think, honestly, mine really hasn't changed. I'll go first here, Anthony. So the way I'm looking at this, you guys, because this is a commodity cyclical 4-year cycle on Bitcoin, I'm really trying to use Bitcoin as my indication as to when to exit these companies. Now, as we get more involved in the HPC AI side of things, that obviously de-risks that cyclical nature, that gives diversified revenue. So this may change for some of the HPC plays, but essentially the way I'm looking at this is I've got the money I want now in the miners and Bitcoin, and I'm going to start essentially dollar cost averaging out when Bitcoin hits $95,000 US. So I'm a Bitcoin maxi. I think this cycle we're going to see very nice moves in Bitcoin. Definitely new all-time highs. Last cycle, I think we were cut short by the mining ban in China. Some people say that robbed us up to 100K out of that cycle. So I think we definitely have some moves to the upside here coming. We'll talk about the impact of the ETF in a second here. I think a lot of people, as we saw with the previous all-time high, they've got their sell orders in at these predetermined levels. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at $100,000 US as a very critical level for Bitcoin. And that's why I want to start exiting before we see that chop. So for me, right now, the strategy is going to be to sell around 15%, 15 to 20 of my portfolio exposure, not necessarily one miner, at 95. Then I'll start selling again at 115, 135, and move up in increments of $20,000 US. That's my strategy as of now. I've got a table I put together, a spreadsheet that basically shows how much I'd be leaving on the table by dollar cost averaging out. And I feel like that ratio gives me a pretty good balance of taking profit and still maximizing upside potential if Bitcoin goes to 250,000 or something. So in terms of my exit strategy, that's where it sits right now. I have been rebalancing my portfolio a little bit. As mentioned, I moved some CleanSpark over to IREN and Core Scientific recently. But aside from that, the 95,000 is kind of my first action point. Anthony?
Sold everything during this podcast.
You can't even joke like that, but this is not financial advice. You did not sell anything.
No, I have in a similar way, taking some profits. Actually, in disclosure, I took some of my IREN position off the table this week. Actually, when it got to 9.30 and when it got to 10, so I made 2 trades. It's still my biggest position, but I said in previous podcasts when I got to certain levels, it's just to take a little bit off the table. And have some cash reserves. I went through 2021 and did really well on some shares in 2021, and then did really badly on a few shares as well in 2021 because the market was in its infancy. And if you're in the stocks in them first 3 or 4 months, I mean, I bought Marathon at $3 or $4 a share, and I ended up selling it at like $80 a share. It was like I sold it at its high. Did the same with Argo. But bought some stocks and they've not done as well. So I've got a couple of stocks that are down. But I said this last 18 months, I've been far more using the knowledge I've gained, being an accountant, able to look at the numbers, looking at where the value is, and then sort of the last 18 months trades, and there's been quite a lot. And by all means, go on the Patreon. All the investor tier members get access to my portfolio, see all the trades I've done. I list all the trades every couple of weeks. Every time I make a trade, they all get a direct message to say I've traded. So they know what I'm doing. If I'm buying or selling like that, they get a direct message to them that within maybe an hour or two of that trade. So they can see. I'm not giving them advice. I'm just saying what I'm doing. And I'm always interested in what other people are doing as well. But I've been very much more a bit conservative. So buying when the dollar cost averaging down, when the price has been dropping like that, especially on some of the value trades. I've been a big fan of IREN. I've made no secret of that the last 18 months. If people have listened to me on Spaces with Mike Alfred and I like the team there, but I had a lot of shares. It was getting close to sort of like 65% of my portfolio was IREN, and I've got quite a few shares. So I made a decision this week. I just wanted to take a little bit off the table. It's still by far my biggest position. And well, moving into second placing position now is Core Scientific, because the sheer today and the last few weeks, it's just been unprecedented. I mean, IREN's had a good run, but Core Scientific's had a phenomenal run this last few days. Just to and bear in mind, it was the best performing share in 2023. Started the year at 4 cents. So anybody, and there were people who got in at 4 cents. I've seen some of the trades. You know, I always love it when people say, "Oh, I bought at this," but put your trade. Shows your trade on the screen, because you know, because we all sold at this amount. We all got that, you know, and it's like, you know, shows your trade. I can show. I'm more than happy to show you some of my Argo trades. I traded at like, you know, £3 a share. I've got quite a few of them there.
Well, and you're right, Anthony. It takes years, you guys, to get good at trading stocks. Yeah.
So you know, I'm not looking at sort of like, I haven't set myself. I've got to start that level there, but I'm definitely going to be trimming back on some of these stocks on the grounds that I'm still quite heavily invested in the mining stocks even now, and I took, you know, a bit off the table this last couple of days. Still a massive amount there. I've got a Bitcoin position, and I've got some Ethereum as well, and they've done really well. I mean, if you know, buying Bitcoin and Ethereum when I did in 2020, 2021, has been, you know, it's been great, especially this last sort of 18 months where we've seen the prices ramp up there. So I've got a nice position there, but I was buying mining stocks. This last 18 months, I've been very much more careful the stocks I've picked. And I've got a couple that sort of like haven't done as well. Stronghold, I've only got a small amount, but I bought Stronghold on the grounds that, you know, I thought with having the full, they've got like, they're probably the one of the few fully vertical integrated miners. They own the power, own the facilities, own the machine. They've got control of everything.
Yeah.
And it's and the fact that we're getting these really good rates of energy, but I think the debt has sort of like, you know, has not helped them. But today, up over 23%. I think it's the best performing mining stock today, if you take away the warrants for Core Scientific.
Oh, and Griffin too, just recently, Anthony, like 20 minutes ago, pumped up 8.5% now. So these companies are moving in a big way here, you guys. Right now, CleanSpark, Bitfarms, Marathon, and Soluna, the only ones down. And realistically, I just saw a comment, if Riot continues to buy Bitfarms, why would their share price be down? It is a little bit odd that Bitfarms would be one of the only red companies today, despite seeing some internal buying pressure. And that leads me to the next question here, Anthony. Which do you think are the next two potential takeover targets? I think we've pretty much already addressed this. You guys, I'd say Bitfarms and Hive are probably the ones we're feeling like are on the radar. In addition to some of the smaller miners, I'm sure many discussions are going on. But
Hive will definitely be on the focus of quite a few potential suitors. Yes, you have to pay a premium for any company, and you know, I think Bitfarms was worth 700 million, and Riot came in with a $900 million offer. So it was I think it was a 24% premium at the date when they you know, made the offer, but obviously now the share price has gone over that offer.
Gotcha.
But you know, even if you said like, you know, 50% premium on Hive and paid the sort of like, say, you know, 350, 400 million, you're getting 5 exahash, and you know that value your exahash significantly lower than even the premium, you know, some of the premium miners. So you're still getting a value company with a significant HPC business that nobody seems to sort of mention with these other markets. I don't think any of these HPC businesses get the credibility that they're due. I mean, we've talked extensively about CoreWeave and Core Scientific today because it's a big number. We've talked. I mean, somebody said, you know, nobody mentions Bit Digital. I think we spoke more about Bit Digital than anybody in the last sort of 3 or 4 months. You know, we've done nothing but sort of, you know, explain about the HPC side. They're probably more now. You know, a HPC business, they are a Bitcoin mining business. If you look at what the revenues that they're achieving,
I'd say that's probably fair now, for sure. Now, a couple other ones we're getting. One question here: why are the ETF purchases not impacting Bitcoin price? I would say they are. I think just like we use the analogy going to the gym. Just because you start eating healthy and you quit smoking and you go to the gym a couple days, it takes weeks and months for this stuff to happen, you guys. Yes, there's a lot of buying pressure. Yes, there's millions and millions of dollars going in each day. But keep in mind, this is over $1 trillion asset here. It takes some time to really move the needle, to dry up the amount of Bitcoin that's available to be purchased. We've seen OTC desks actually calling big individual holders and Bitcoin mining companies. And keep in mind, you guys, these miners, a lot of them are selling into the market. However, Anthony, I did see the last 2 days, I believe, in excess of 10,000 Bitcoin being purchased. One of them I saw was in excess of 12,000 Bitcoin purchased. And we know that there's only 450 being produced each day. So my answer to this question is I feel like right now we've been kind of pulling the slack out of the system, and we're getting very, very close to where the rubber's going to meet the road here in terms of the supply demand imbalance. But I think we really needed to let some air out of the tires. Bitcoin has now consolidated in this $65,000 to $70,000 range. Amount of Bitcoin on exchange and available to purchase is nearing all-time lows. And we're now seeing not only the US ETFs, but we're seeing ETFs around the world starting to be approved, which is going to really add to this buying pressure. So I think we are going to see the move in Bitcoin. I think it's very imminent. And I actually said to Anthony, again, not financial advice, but I expect us to see an all-time high probably by Monday next week is what my personal hypothesis or prediction is. Anthony, what would your answer to this be? Are you feel like the ETFs are having an impact? I would assume, eh?
Well, they've had a massive impact. I mean, like I said, Bitcoin price was 42,000 on January the 1st. It's 71,000 today. I mean, again, it's about expectation. So there's been significantly more green days than there's been red days in terms of inflows to outflows from the ETF. So they're growing every day. Yesterday was apparently the biggest inflow in terms of purchase of Bitcoin. So that's good in terms of adoption. What we also got to remember is there's a lot of trading going on in Bitcoin. I don't do any trading in Bitcoin, but there's a lot of trading going in there. People are gambling on the price going up or down, and that probably has an impact on the price as well. But the long-term picture is it's looking good at the moment, and we know historically from post-cycle analysis that the Bitcoin price does rally significantly. Maybe not necessarily in the first month, but in sort of months 3 or 4, 5 post-halving, we'll see a spike in the Bitcoin price.
Yeah, no, that's all valid. And another good question that I just saw Anthony come up here. Do you think we're going to start to hear other offers for Bitfarms? So in part of their, let me just see if I can find the Bitfarms side.
Yeah, they reckon they had a few more bids, didn't they?
Well, as part of their, I guess, official PR statement, they came out and said that we've actually got other offers. I haven't seen any of those yet. Obviously, if they're material and non-public, they have to disclose that. But I have seen on X some rumors that these may be coming from outside of the mining community. So obviously CleanSpark, Marathon, Riot, these are the companies within the mining sector that have the balance sheet and the flexibility to maybe buy one of these companies. I also heard Block was interested, and I've also heard some other companies outside of the mining sector that maybe are involved in fintech or maybe just in the crypto sector as a whole may want to pick up a miner.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the rules are, for disclosure, if there were formal bids or whether it's just, expressions of interest. But now that Riot have made an interest there, we might see more M&A. And I was just thinking, actually, when I was looking at the volumes of IREN, and it wouldn't be too difficult to hide purchase of IREN stock if their volumes are sort of 10-12 million a day, whether they be a miner that's one of the big players who come in and get a business there which is going to grow to potentially 30 exahash in the next 7 months, with one big site, also got a HPC business, so probably ticks a lot of boxes there. But I don't think any miner is too small for to not be interested. I mean, IREN is still in terms of comparison with the likes of Marathon, CleanSpark, and Riot, very undervalued even at today's prices. So you're going to get 10 exahash added, and potentially 20 exahash in the next 7 months. So that takes a Riot or a Marathon or a CleanSpark well in excess of their early targets they need to do. So we're looking at Hive, but who's to say the likes of an IREN couldn't also come under the wrath of a potential suitor. But there's going to be, I think there'll be a lot more activity. I was unsure. I mean, 2022, they were saying there's going to be loads. There was none in 2022 when the Bitcoin price was dropping very, very little. I mean, we know Core Scientific went to Chapter 11, and a couple of miners were sort of on the precipice. Argo were on the precipice of Chapter 11. Greenwich Mining were on the precipice of Chapter 11. But look at Core Scientific today. It's come out of Chapter 11. It's it's done everything well in Chapter 11. It was mining the most Bitcoin a month in Chapter 11. It's come out. It's still doing great updates, and now it's moving into the HPC side. It's really now showing the strength of what it can do. So I don't know. I mean, you look at small miners, but you also need to look at some of those mid-tier miners as well to see if there's a real benefit of grabbing. Would TeraWulf be an interest for somebody as well? The TeraWulf's market capitalization is 900 million. So again, 8 exahash, around about that 100 million mark. So there's a premium with CleanSpark, premium with Marathon, premium with Riot. You could go in there and get a company, a more discounted rate. So who knows? But I expect M&A between some of the smaller miners just to sort of just to keep them going. And that's probably the only way some of those smaller miners will be able to grow is by merging with another miner.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, guys, maybe we'll make this the last one. We've been going 2.5 hours here. It's still a lot of viewers, so if you have some more questions, throw them in. We can definitely fire through them. But
if anyone knows why, I mean, Stronghold's up 29, nearly 30%. It's up 30% now.
Yeah.
So if anyone's seen anything out there there's news on Stronghold, let us know, because that share price is and we know share prices can the volatility can go up significantly, but that on a day when some of the miners are in the red.
Yeah, it's odd.
It's not a green day all round, but obviously the likes of Wolf and IREN are doing really well. Say Core Scientific doing really well today, but Stronghold for a mining stock is leading the pack at the moment. And I don't know if there's anything out there suggesting why, or is it to do with the fact that a lot of these miners have significant short positions, and therefore there's people trading them shares to the market makers to make short-term gains. So it could be up today 30% down tomorrow, 30%. You've lost all your gains there. So there is a lot of short trading.
The short interest is interesting, Anthony. I want to talk about this Bitcoin spike, and this would actually be probably a catalyst for a short squeeze. But a lot of these miners, and honestly, I'll give you guys a little story here. This industry is hard, right? There's a lot of volatility. We think we have the right thesis with Bitcoin, but it's very difficult to believe that thesis when the stocks are getting beaten down. We saw huge gains in December. And I remember thinking, hey, my account's lower than it was in December, 4 months past that point. It gets hard sometimes. And I was thinking through the bear case, and I was thinking, hey, top line revenue has been cut in half for these miners. There's tax implications, there's mining bans, there's ETF exposure now you can get. Maybe the bears have a case. And I definitely, obviously I don't believe that, but I could see their perspective. There are a lot of people out there, you guys, that do not believe in Bitcoin. They don't think it's going to work. They think these miners, we just saw a short report on Riot. We've seen short reports on HUT. They still beat the drum about the environmental concerns and the amount of capex that this industry requires, the ATMs. So there's a lot of people who are short these companies. Now, Anthony, in the event we see something like this happen, where we wake up tomorrow, Bitcoin's at 80, 90, 100,000. We see another one of these massive $3.5 billion CoreWeave contracts. We see something that's out of the norm. The short positions, you guys, are going to be in real trouble. And that's where you start to see some of these big 20, 30, 40% moves. I think, Anthony, you said that CoreWeave news the next day, Core Scientific at one point was up 70%. That's a short squeeze, you guys. So in the event this happens, Anthony, we wake up tomorrow, Bitcoin's at 90,000, let's say. Do you think it's going to be the miners with the hodl that really benefit? Or do you think it's still going to be the miners with the growth potential? because people are thinking, hey, I don't really care if you have any Bitcoin now, but if the price is going up and you're going to hit 30 exahash by the end of the year, that's where I want my money.
Maybe there's I mean, if you think about the premium of what CleanSpark, Marathon, and Riot have at the moment, is based on the it's based on the fact they've got HODL. So IREN and CleanSpark are having a really good rally this week, and both, going over, close to 1.5 billion now as market capitalization. You look at, hash rate is one thing, but I think there's a bit of a premium for some of the big players. But then I look at Bit Digital and I look at Hive, who haven't seen their market capitalizations reflect what they've got. I mean, their market capitalization, half of their value is on the treasury, and you've got a business there that they're running. So would IREN expect to get to the levels of, if IREN gets to 30 at the end of the year and CleanSpark's at 30, are we saying that they'll both be valued at the same level? Probably not, because CleanSpark's going to have 7,000 or 8,000 Bitcoin on the balance sheet. They're literally now, this last few months, they're hodling everything apart from what they're issuing as part of the salary package, which is a couple of 2 or 3 Bitcoin a month. But they're hodling everything else because you need that money. It's times are hard. We don't want people struggling. I'm just
you got to pay bills for sure. Yeah,
pay the wedding rings and stuff.
There you go. Yeah. We'll leave that one there. Okay, guys. Comments have slowed down a little bit. We've been going a long time here, 2.5 hours. Anthony, it's almost your bedtime over there in the UK. You guys, really appreciate the interaction today. I know having Sebastian on here is always a great perk. We'd really appreciate you to smash the like button before you go. A big help to the channel here, helps get this content to other people. If you're not subscribed, that would mean the world to us as well. Anthony and I are traveling next week, you guys. So we're actually got invited down to Dallas, which is super cool. This is going to be the first time either one of us has been to a meaningful Bitcoin mine of scale. And we're going to be going to the Core Scientific Denton facility, which is very good timing considering the CoreWeave news. And we're going to be touring the new Corsicana, which is a world-class gigawatt facility. Now, we've got videographers coming with us. So we're actually going to be trying to put out videos while we're down there. So some interviews, some behind the scenes, some site footage. Anthony and I will go back to the hotel rooms. We'll try and get some videos out next week and give you guys a little bit of behind the scenes information or videos, images about these new world-class facilities. So very cool week coming up. If we're not on our regular schedule or cadence of podcasts, that's why. And then we'll be back the following week in action here with our regular schedule. What do you like?
Have a steak in Texas. Tell me, is it better than Alberta beef?
I doubt it. Alberta beef is world renowned, but I definitely will have a steak down there. Yeah, very exciting, you guys. This is really, honestly, if we can just on the personal side here, it's turned into my dream come true. I remember my first interview with Sue Ennis. I said, Sue, what is it like to work in the Bitcoin mining industry? This must be just surreal to you. And I started the McNallie money thing. I was still working in the corporate world here. I actually worked at Shaw and Rogers, which is a telecom company in Canada. And then 2 years later, you guys, this is my full-time thing. I'm paired up with one of the best analysts in the world. We're getting to travel around. We're going to site tours, get to talk about Bitcoin all day. We're making money on the investments. So it really does all. What's that?
We're going to Nashville.
We're going to Nashville. Anthony's speaking at the Nashville Bitcoin conference. So it's just a dream come true. And I wanted to thank each and every one of you guys. We wouldn't be able to do this without the subscribers and the viewers. I know we provide a lot of tremendous information to this community, and we're happy to do that. And the likes, the comments, the subscribes, they just really make the whole show work. So thank you to all of you. And sorry to make you tear up there, Jane, but honestly, it's just really rewarding to wake up every day and do something that you're so passionate about. We've also got a ton of swag, you guys, the Power Mining shirts and hats and stickers and whatever. So feel free to shoot me an email. We're happy to send some of this stuff out for you guys pro bono on the house. And Anthony, I'll let you wrap up there before I start tearing up, bud. There you go. Look at that heartfelt speech.
Army. No, it's been a good show. Great to have Sebastian on today. Always a friend of Sebastian's. Been friends with Sebastian for a few years now. Both doing our thing, and we both carried on doing our analysis through that bear cycle when other people, dropped off the space and then tried to come back in recently. But we've been there all the way through, never left the space. Hopefully you find what we do, is helpful. We don't talk about future prices. It's so difficult. We'd all like to see all the stock prices rise, but I let the experts do that. I quite like to go and look at the accounts, see what they've done over the previous 3 months, what they've done over the previous year, look at the growth perspectives like that, try and factor in, are they going to be profitable going from one quarter to another quarter? Try and bring in some sort of like valuations for these miners in terms of using a lot of metrics. So if you've ever read some of my articles, I like to get to the bottom of some of these miners. It's helped in the last 18 months, I'll be honest with you. It's really helped me doing this analysis. I do spend a lot of time. Bryce will confirm that, I'm, working most days and even the weekends. It's rare I take, sort of like a day off to, stop doing it. But actually, when you're enjoying doing something, you don't seem to mind as much. But yeah, it's been great to be in the space. Great to do these live podcasts. This is only about the 6th or 7th one we've done. So I think today's been a really good one. Answered a lot of questions, gave a lot of updates, covered a lot of space. And just grateful for everyone who's tuned in and listened to us, and hopefully we can carry on doing these on a regular basis. Let us know in the comments what times are suitable. Was today a good time to do the podcast that would you prefer different times? We're open to change, but we stuck to this sort of time on a regular basis, and we'll see how it goes. But we're hoping to, at the 2 sites there, we'll try and get some information. I've seen some of the questions coming through now about Rockdale and about Core Scientific, and we'll definitely be asking questions down there. We are going down there with a load of the industry analysts. So these are the JP Morgan, the Cantor Fitzgerald, all these people will be there as well. We've been invited as well as part of that group. We're the only 2 who've been invited to some of these. We're
going with the big boys, Anthony.
And actually, what's interesting enough, we spoke to a couple of CEOs, and they said they were speaking with their analysts in like New York, and their analysts were watching our videos. So this is going to be great. We'll be able to see these persons firsthand and say, sign their autographs or something like that, if they want to.
There you go. Well,
so we'll certainly be asking questions about those 2 areas there, because I know I can see the questions coming through. So we'll get to the bottom of Rockdale, try and get Jason to say, when are we going to see not just the machine swapped over, when are we going to see him working, get that production number where it needs to be, and 2024 being the year of Riot Platforms, because it really could be, or it could be, a yearly dread. But I'm hoping it's the former. I think 2024 will be the change round for them.
I do too. I actually picked up some Riot this week as well, so there's a little Easter egg for you guys still watching. Yeah,
in the UK, I predict a Riot.
There you go. And this is a really fitting tweet to end the show, you guys. We go on the journey together. What I love most about this, I'm learning every single day. Anthony and I do not know the price of Bitcoin. We don't know the future price of these stocks. We don't know where AI or HPC is going, but we're learning, we're following it, and we're on the journey together. And days like this.
Together or tougher?
What's that?
Is that together or tougher?
I think probably together. But days like this make it worth it, right? Green across the board. Everybody here is making money. Everybody's feeling good, and we're learning about it all together. So thanks so much, guys. We'll talk to you soon. And next you'll see us, we'll be in Texas. Awesome. Have a great weekend, you guys.